Chapter 406. Danhao spoke. Many people's expressions changed. The other was not the same as the other officials. His status was above most people. The position of Ding Yuan General. It was one of the very few positions with real power. The imperial court had 5 great generals. Danhao was one of them. He had no less than 10 million soldiers, comparable to a duke. So, the other also had great power in the imperial court. When Danhao opened his mouth, Xing Jianan's expression darkened. If he did not fear Zhou Dingjun, then he was rather wary of Danhao. Or rather, the two sides were not on the same level. If he offended one Zhou Dingjun, or offended more Zhou Dingjuns, Xing Jianan was confident he could deal with them. But if it was Danhao, to put it bluntly, if the other attacked him, no one would stop him. After all, the title of Ding Yuan General was earned by the other's blade and spear. When the human emperor was on the throne, the great Zhao had not truly unified the world. Danhao was one of the human emperor's sharpest blades. In the past, he had fought against the Yao and destroyed other countries. He had undeniable merits for the great Zhao. Apart from that, the other's strength was unfathomable. So after Danhao spoke, Xing Jianan only opened his mouth but did not say anything. As for the others, like the South Protecting King and others who could wrestle with Danhao, they all narrowed their eyes. No one spoke in opposition. On the throne, the coldness on Shi Yang's face faded, replaced by a smile. He said, "General Dan's words are not false. If so, then we should focus on killing the demons and quelling the demon disaster. As for the problem of the seal, I believe that Zhu Bing has suppressed the entrance for thousands of years. There should not be any problems." Zhu Bing could not be easily moved. The reason was because it was suppressing a sealed entrance. Or else, with the power of Zhu Bing and the great Zhao, it was enough to sweep the world. Hearing this, Danhao asked again, "May I know how much of the ancestral armament's power can still be divided?" Zhu Bing doesn't have much power left. Since that's the case, I implore your majesty to split a portion of Zhu Bing's power to kill the evil devils in the great Zhao dynasty's Celestial Stage 6 to prevent the Devil Abyss from having more Celestial Stage 6 experts in the future. Danhao said bluntly. Although Davis 7th level was not easy to break through, if one succeeded in breaking through, that would be a huge problem. Hearing this, Xiang pondered for a moment and finally nodded. "All right, I only have one request. That is to kill all the evil spirits outside of Spirit Realm and the Great Realms. Do not leave any of them alive. Your subject is willing to help," Danhao said in a deep voice. Hearing this, the smile on Shi Yang's face grew even brighter. With Danhao publicly responding to his words, the rest of the matter would be much simpler. Orders were issued one after another. More than half of the experts in the imperial court were mobilized to suppress the demons. Right now, Xiang urgently needed something to stabilize his prestige and secure his position as the emperor. The so-called 3 years. He had no intention of being satisfied at all. How could 3 years be enough? Since Xiang had already sat on the throne, he had no intention of stepping down. Not to mention 3 years. Even if it was 300 years or 3,000 years. As long as he was still alive, no one could take the throne away from him. As long as the demon disaster was quelled, he could win over many people's hearts. Thinking of this, Xiang gave another order and said in a cold voice, "The demon disaster is not a matter of one person or one realm. The soldiers of the great Zhao should fight against the demon disaster, but the sects of the cultivation world should not stand by and watch. Pass down my order. All sects need to cooperate with the imperial court and fight against the demon disaster together. If anyone refuses to comply, it is equivalent to betraying the human race." The words betraying the human race made many people's expressions change again. Even Danhao's expression changed slightly. He did not expect it. Xiang had just taken the throne, and he had the guts to attack the cultivation world. One had to know. Although the cultivation world was not as powerful as the imperial court, it was not much weaker. Otherwise, the imperial court would not have acquiesced to the status of the cultivation world for so many years. Back then, the human emperor did not attack the sects of the cultivation world. It was because he needed them to stabilize the people's hearts. He did not attack later because the human emperor's lifespan was approaching, and he did not want to cause too much trouble. There were various signs. It was not that the imperial court was unwilling to attack the sects of the cultivation world, but they had not found the right opportunity or the right time. But now what Shiyang was doing, it was equivalent to publicly imposing imperial power on the sections. If it was not handled well, it might cause a strong counterattack. However, looking at the high-spirited Shiyang, Dan Hao did not say much. In his heart, he had long had the idea of attacking some of the cultivation sections. After all, not everyone respected imperial power, and there were many people who despised the law. For these people, in Dan Hao's eyes, they were all rebels. Now his only worry was, Shiyang had taken too big a step. If he was not careful, the future trouble would not be so easy to deal with. In addition, issue a mission to gather all the mutants in the world to fight against the demon disaster. Yes, Your Majesty. Fallen Moon Manor. Fallen Moon Marquis Du Chengwu was also a little overwhelmed. At the moment, in the various manors, the Fallen Moon Manor was ranked in the top 3 places where the demon disaster was the most serious. Although the true Dominion Evil Fiend was not strong, he was equivalent to an expert who had condensed the universe Skylock in the True Dominion. Ordinary cultivators at the Spirit Martial Realm or the Divine Martial Realm would find it difficult to deal with an evil fiend in the True Dominion. They would only be able to kill it if they used a powerful Dao artifact. A 2-seal Dao artifact was enough to kill an ordinary Dominion Evil Demon. However, to kill the True Dominion Evil Demon, a 4-seal or higher Dao artifact was required. A 4-seal Dao artifact. There were not many of them in the entire Fallen Moon Manor. However, the evil demons that had broken out of the seal had brought disaster to 7 or 8 True Dominion. The situation was already chaotic. Besides the evil demons that had broken out of the seal, the evil demons sealed in the other True Dominion had also become a hidden danger that could erupt at any time. Although the Fallen Moon Manor, half of the places where the demon disaster had broken out were under the control of the Fallen Moon Marquis, the other half were under the control of the Imperial Court. However, even so, this was troublesome enough. In the Marquis Manor, Du Chengwu's face was cold, and so were the other generals in the hall. The atmosphere was very gloomy. A total of 7 evil demons have broken out of the seal in 4 True Dominion. Although troops have been deployed to suppress them, the demon disaster has already reached a certain scale. What do you think? Now that the demon disaster has broken out, we have to suppress the evil demons first. How do we suppress them? Du Chengwu glanced at the other party, who was at a loss for words. Suppress? How? Although the Fallen Moon Manor was not weak, there were not many top-notch experts who could fight against the evil demons. The demon disaster this time was very serious, so it would not be easy to suppress it in one fell swoop. After a moment of silence, one of them cupped his hands and said, Marquis, we have to leave some of our forces to restrain the Imperial Court. Although it is difficult to fight against the evil demons, the Fallen Moon Manor is not our only force. What do you mean? The cultivation world and the mutants. Upon hearing that, Du Chengwu's expression softened as he said, Tell us your thoughts. Yes. Upon hearing that, a smile appeared on that person's face. He cupped his hands and said, The demon disaster is not our problem alone. The cultivators of the cultivation world do not wish to see the demon disaster spread. In that case, we might as well join forces with the sects of the cultivation world to deal with the demon disaster together. At such a critical juncture, the possibility of them rejecting us is not high. As for the mutants, at this point, he paused for a moment before continuing. The most troublesome thing about the evil demons, other than their strength, is that they have the means to turn the demon disaster into a demon disaster. However, the mutants are immortal. No matter how the evil demons kill them, they will not be able to turn them into a demon disaster. Although the evil demons were released by the mutants, there are many mutants at the moment. They are internally chaotic and not united. As long as we issue some missions and reward them, it will not be a problem to drive the mutants to deal with the evil demons. As long as the mutants are immortal, the speed of the demon disaster's spread will be suppressed. Then, it will be much easier to exterminate the evil demons. That person finished speaking. Then, he sat back down. As for the hall, it was much quieter now. Upon hearing that, Du Chengwu nodded and said, That is the only way. They could make use of the cultivation world and the mutants to deal with the evil demons. Given the current situation of the Fallen Moon Prefecture, this method was the safest. Or else, if the demon disaster was allowed to continue, the power in his hands would be greatly damaged. By then, even if the demon disaster was exterminated, it would be difficult for him to contend against the imperial court. Then, someone said, the demon disaster is a problem, but so are the other evil demons sealed in the true dominion. Why don't we follow Marquis Bayun's example and take the lead to kill all the evil demons? This way, there will be no possibility of the demon disaster erupting in the future. What's the point of killing the evil demons? Someone else retorted. That person shook his head and said, killing the evil demons is difficult and easy at the same time. Don't forget how the Bayun Prefecture killed the evil demons. If Marquis Bayun can ask Qin Shujian to kill the evil demons, we can do the same. We will discuss this in the future. Du Chenggu interrupted him directly. Now, the most important thing is to quell the demon disaster. He wanted to ask Qin Shujian to kill the evil demons of the true dominion. This thought, he had thought of it before. After all, an expert who had condensed 4 universal skylocks was almost invincible in the true dominion. Unless an almighty or a fiend celestial intervened, no one else would be a match for him. The evil demons were strong. However, they had not reached the level of a fiend celestial. In that case, they would naturally not be a match for Qin Shujian. However, in Du Qingwu's opinion, he had to ask the Bayun Prefecture for help to deal with the Fallen Moon Prefecture's problem. If this news spread, he would lose face. Wasn't this clearly telling everyone in the world? The Fallen Moon Prefecture was incompetent. They could not even solve the demon disaster and had to ask someone else for help. To Du Qingwu, he would not do this unless he had no other choice. Besides, the Fallen Moon Prefecture was not entirely under his control. He had half of it. The Imperial Court also had half of it. If the Imperial Court stepped in to deal with the evil demons, it would be a different story. Chapter 407. Following the Imperial Court's order. Many experts left the Central State Prefecture and rushed to various places to kill the demons. The players also received a large-scale mission to fight against the demon disaster. Kill the demons. Looking at the mission in the system, Chao Hong's face showed some interest. After failing to sneak into Yuan's sect, he chose to join the Imperial Court. This was also something that he had no choice about. Chao Hong felt that joining other sects was not very safe after all. If the sect he was in offended Yuan's sect, there was a 95% chance that he would have to pack up and run away. Until now, he had recognized a fact. That was that he and the Liangshan Stronghold Master seemed to be born with conflicting fate. As long as he was close to the other party, nothing good would happen to him. Especially now that Qin Shujian was becoming more and more famous, his strength was also becoming more and more powerful. Chao Hong felt that his chances of revenge were slim, so he gradually calmed down and turned to improving his strength. As for the Qin Extermination Alliance he was in, there were also many people who had sneaked into Yuan's sect. But Chao Hong found that these members who had sneaked in seemed to have betrayed many of them. They had completely forgotten what had happened in the past. Then, they were bombarded by Yuan's sect's sugar-coated bullets and threw themselves into the arms of the enemy. To this, he had no other choice. After all, for the current players, there were not many opportunities to join the top sections. It was not that the players' qualifications were not good. It was that the other top sects had not opened their doors and recruited disciples. No matter how good their qualifications were, if they wanted to join, they had to open the door for them. In comparison, to be able to join Yuan's sect had become an honor. In the end, none of the players were on the same page. Most of them only cared about the benefits in front of them. To be able to get better from Yuan's sect, who would be so free to destroy their own rice bowl? For this phenomenon, Chao Hong was already prepared. If the players are reliable, even a sow can climb a tree. He found that in the end, he still had to rely on himself. Fortunately, although he only held the position of a constable in a city, he was still part of the Imperial Court. With the Imperial Court as his backer, he was better off than ordinary people. So now the Imperial Court had issued a mission. Players like Chao Hong, who had joined the imperial court, were the first to receive the mission notice. Lu Qingheng said in a deep voice, "It seems that the demon disaster has really pushed the imperial court into a corner. Otherwise, they wouldn't have issued such a mission." The imperial court had always maintained its status. He rarely gave out quests to the players. For people like them who had sneaked into a city to serve as constables, the most they could do was to take on missions within the city, catch wanted criminals, or deal with some other matters. Strictly speaking, these missions were not issued by the imperial court. It could only be said to be some of the daily affairs of the local government. After completing these tasks, players could also obtain merit points that were similar to contribution points, which could be exchanged for martial arts techniques and other cultivation resources. Although he didn't have any teachers to guide him, it was still slightly inferior to the sect. However, when it came to resources, no sect could compare to the imperial court. As long as you have enough merit points, you can even exchange for top-notch martial arts. As for pills and whatnot, that was even less of a problem. Killing a demonic calamity gives me 1 merit point. This reward is really generous. Looking at the mission reward, Chao Hong clicked his tongue in wonder. 1 merit point for a devil calamity. There were at least hundreds of thousands of demonic disasters that could form on such a scale. If they were all killed by a single player, then he could obtain hundreds of thousands of merit points. Such a reward, it was extremely generous. Of course, it was almost impossible to kill all the demonic disasters with one person's strength. However, if used properly, hundreds or thousands of merit points could be obtained. That was also a good thing. After all, the imperial court's merit points were more precious. If we gather 10,000 merit points, we can exchange for the position of guard commander. There is hope for this mission. It's not easy to be the guard commander. Chao Hong shook his head and sighed. If they wanted to be promoted, other than being promoted by making meritorious contributions, they had to exchange for a position with their merit points. Of course, there was a limit to this exchange. However, this limit was still too far away for them. Lu Qingheng said, "I remember that there is a powerful one-time array in the merit points exchange. If we exchange for it, we should be able to make a profit." It's hard to say. That array is not only targeting us. By the time we gather enough merit points, it might have already been exchanged for. Maybe we can contact the people in the Yuan sect? What do you mean? Chao Hong was startled. He seemed to understand the other party's idea. Lu Qingheng smiled and said, "Isn't the Liang Mountain Campmaster known as the Array Grandmaster? In the Baiyun Mansion, the Array Grandmaster is popular in the Yuan sect. According to the information revealed by the Yuan sect players, there are many arrays that can be exchanged for. We can use other things to exchange with them. Anyway, there is no demonic disaster in the Baiyun Mansion, so we don't need these things." To deal with the demonic disasters, using an array to attack a group was the most suitable. It wasn't as if no one had seen the video of Qin Shujian killing hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts with a single formation. Lu Qingheng did not expect to be able to obtain such an array. Even if he could get a simplified version of it, it would be worth hundreds or thousands of merit points. As for trading with the Yuan sect players, they would either use some treasures or money in the real world. To put it bluntly, it was equivalent to spending money to buy merit points. For them, even if they had money, they might not be able to buy merit points. Now that there was an opportunity to spend money to buy merit points, they naturally would not let it go. I'm just afraid that they will ask for a sky-high price. There is a limit to asking for a sky-high price. It shouldn't be too much. After all, there is more than one player in the Yuan sect. It shouldn't be a big problem, Lu Qingheng replied confidently. If one trade did not work, then they would change to another. There were tens of thousands of players in the Yuan sect. It would not be difficult to find one who was willing to trade. Hearing this, Chao Hong nodded and agreed with the other party's approach. Compared to using merit points to exchange for the array in the imperial court, the two of them were willing to pay other things and trade with other players. Because merit points were really hard to come by. The most important thing was to exchange for a position. There were many things that needed to be exchanged. In addition to merit points, one also needed a position to exchange for it. It was also because of this, hence, the importance of merit points skyrocketed. People like Chao Hong and Lu Qinghong were just a microcosm of the current players. The imperial court ruled the world. Its influence was like the sun in the sky. Even if the human emperor had passed away, and there were rebellions everywhere, the imperial court still maintained its orthodox position. However, although the imperial court was powerful, it did not have deep dealings with the players. Perhaps it was because the imperial court looked down on the weak strength of the players, so the imperial court rarely issued any missions. Or rather, this mission to kill demons was the first time the imperial court issued a mission to other players. In order to be worthy of the imperial court's reputation, the reward for the mission was naturally very generous. Almost as soon as the mission was issued, a large number of players responded. For the players, it was not a problem to work for anyone. The problem was who could give them more benefits. Now in the Great Zhao, no one could compete with the imperial court in terms of financial resources. As for those players who created the demon disaster and wanted to fish in troubled waters, naturally, they would not respond to the imperial court's call. However, these people were only a minority. More players chose to accept the mission. In Baiyun Manor, after the imperial court issued the mission, many players complained. Looking at the players from other manors, their eyes were about to turn red. Why? Why don't the players from Baiyun Manor have any missions? Are they discriminating against Baiyun Manor? Damn, why don't they give me any missions? Aren't the players from Baiyun Manor human? I want to ask if it's too late to go to other manors now. The players were also unhappy that Baiyun Manor did not have any missions from the imperial court. However, it was too late to regret it now. As soon as the quests were issued, they were all accepted by the players within a day. The number of players was comparable to the human race in the Great Zhao. It was impossible for the imperial court to issue so many missions. That would be enough to empty the imperial court's treasury. Moreover, the demon disaster did not require so many players. Therefore, there was a limit to the number of people who could accept the mission. However, even if there was a limit, many players accepted the mission. Unlike Baiyun Manor, there was no mission at all. To this, the players from Baiyun Manor were both angry and helpless. It was their fault that Baiyun Manor did not have a demon disaster. Not long ago, the master of Cold Mountain Stronghold had killed all of these demons with a single slash. At that time, they just watched the other party kill the demons with the attitude of watching a show. Only now did they realize Qin Shujian was not only killing the demons, but also bleeding them. At the thought of this, the players from Baiyun Manor felt even more tired. Without the demon disaster, there would be no missions. The demons in the ordinary realm and true domain were all killed by Yuanzong. As for the demons in the spiritual domain, the players could not get close to it. Therefore, even if some players wanted to create a demon disaster to get a mission, it was impossible. Many people were unhappy with Qin Shujian because of this. However, so what if they were unhappy? The current Cold Mountain Fort's Fort Master was no longer the same boss that could still fight against other players. The battle record of killing demon kings was there for all to see. An array could kill hundreds of thousands of demon beasts. Under such circumstances, no one dared to provoke him. If they died, that would be an even greater loss. Looking at Yuanzong, this place had always been relatively peaceful. After all, there was an array grandmaster in charge. As long as there was no war that involved the whole world, it would not affect this place. As for the demons in the Endless Mountain Range, they were restrained by the Heavenly Demon Temple and did not cause any commotion. However, there were some who did not believe in evil and tried to enter the immortal planes. However, there was no exception. All of them triggered the array there and were killed on the spot. Chapter 408. Qingwu Hall. Zheng Fang and a middle-aged man in brocade sat opposite each other. Towards the sudden arrival of this person, Zheng Fang's expression was slightly solemn because the person in front of him was not an ordinary person, but from the Central State Prefecture. The other party had a clear identity: Imperial Court Emissary. No servants came to serve tea, and the atmosphere in the hall was solemn. Zheng Fang stroked his beard with one hand, looked at the middle-aged emissary in front of him, and said in a deep voice, "May I know why the esteemed emissary is here?" This time, I am here on the orders of the Imperial Court to invite Sect Master Qin to help. Invite Sect Master Qin? Elder Zheng should know that now that the devil calamity is rampant in the Great Zhao country, the Imperial Court has invited all the strong practitioners in the world to kill the evil spirits and quell the devil calamity. Sect Master Qin once killed the moon-swallowing Demon King in Fallen Moon Manor and hundreds of evil spirits in Baiyun Manor. His Majesty has also heard of such a shocking move. Now, in order to deal with the demons in the other prefectures, he specially came to invite Sect Master Qin to help. Wu Lang did not beat around the bush, nor did he have the arrogance of an Imperial Court emissary. He just cupped his hands and said, but in his words, there was also some implicit flattery towards Qin Shujian. Zheng Fang also understood some of Wu Lang's words. Compared to the calm situation in the Baiyun prefecture, the other prefectures were in chaos. But, after a moment of silence, he shook his head and said, my sect master is in seclusion. I'm afraid I will have to disappoint you. Seclusion? Wu Lang was stunned. He thought that Yuan Zong might refuse, but he never thought that Qin Shujian would be in seclusion. Immediately, Wu Lang's heart sank a little. Experts in seclusion were different from other cultivators, and it was not strange for them to be in seclusion for a few months or even a few years. But if so, his mission this time would be considered a failure. Thinking of this, Wu Lang hesitated and said with difficulty, I wonder if Elder Zheng has a way to contact Sect Master Qin? This old man also has no way. Even I can't casually approach the place where Sect Master is in seclusion. Sigh. Wu Lang could not help but sigh at this time. Seeing this, Zheng Fang said, how many days did the Imperial Court give you this time? Half a month at most. How about this, if you don't mind? You can rest in my sect for a while. If the sect master comes out in half a month, I will send someone to inform you. If he doesn't, then there's nothing I can do about it. That's all we can do now. Hearing this, Wu Lang nodded and did not refuse. Then, he cupped his hands and said politely, it's just that I'll have to trouble your esteemed sect this way. I hope that Elder Zheng won't take offense. It is my sect's honor to have you stay. At this point, Zheng Fang changed the topic. I believe that since you've come to the Frost Mountain Spirit Realm, you haven't seriously explored Frost Mountain City, right? After exiting the teleportation gate, I rushed straight to your esteemed sect. I didn't have time to look around. That's perfect. This old man will have someone accompany you around Cold Mountain City. You can also experience the scenery of our Cold Mountain City. Thank you very much. Subsequently, Zheng Fang called for an inner sect deacon and left with Wu Lang. He said that he wanted the other party to stay in Yuan's sect and rest. In fact, he made the arrangements in Frost Mountain City. Inside the sect, apart from the disciples of Yuan's sect, the rest of the people were not allowed to stay overnight. On the contrary, Frost Mountain City became an important place for Yuan's sect to entertain guests. With Wu Lang's status, it was impossible for him to casually send someone to entertain the guests. Although the inner sect deacons were not as important as the elders, their status was not low either. As a guest of the Imperial Court, they would not be impolite. At the peak of Frost Mountain, since he started cultivating, Qin Shujian would wake up every once in a while. Then, he would look at the increased life force and directly use it on cultivation techniques. Until now, basically, all 5 cultivation techniques had been upgraded to the 8th level of the spiritual martial technique. As for the next level, there was no way to upgrade it. This was because the upgrade from the 8th level to the 9th level of the spiritual martial realm required 50 million life force, and the upgrade from the 9th level to the 10th level required 100 million life force. Adding the 5 cultivation techniques together, that was 750 million life force. Looking at his own life force, Qin Shujian's face turned black. Upgrading each level of cultivation technique consumes too much life force. Looking at his life force that was not even a fraction, he could not help but sigh. Ever since the sect had set the new rules, with more than 20,000 disciples in Yuan's sect, the amount of life force that could be contributed to him every day was 1 to 3 million. At the peak, it could even reach 5 to 6 million. However, this was very rare, and as time passed, the disciples became stronger and stronger. The number of life force that could be contributed also gradually increased. After a month, The total amount of life force was at least 50 million life force. If it was before, 50 million life force was already a lot. But for now, 50 million life force was just a drop in the bucket. A cultivation technique from the first level of the spiritual martial technique to the 10th level would require about 200 million life force. In other words, on average, every 4 months, Qin Shujian would be able to upgrade one cultivation technique to the spiritual martial technique to the perfection stage. If all 7 cultivation techniques reached the perfection stage, then it would take more than 2 years. More than 2 years. From the spiritual martial realm to the divine martial realm, and with an extremely strong foundation, this progress was actually not slow at all. It could even be described as shocking. But, at the very most, he had only been here for about 3 years. In more than a year, he had consecutively broken through the basic martial realm, the true martial realm, and the spiritual martial realm. But now the span from the spiritual martial realm to the divine martial realm took the same amount of time. It was no wonder that Qin Shujian had the idea that the breakthrough was slow, and this was only the spiritual martial realm. If he reached the later stages of the divine martial realm, it might take a few years to deduce one cultivation technique to the perfection stage. It would take at least 10 or 20 years to push all 7 cultivation techniques to the perfection stage. As for the celestial being stage, it might take a few hundred years. If he thought about it this way, Qin Shujian felt that he needed to think about the path after the divine martial realm. The most important thing now is to break through the current realm. On second thought, he focused his attention on his own attributes. During this period of time, his luck value had slowly increased by more than 100 points. It proved that the 5 elders were still diligently going out to kill the demons and did not slack off. It was just that the ordinary realm in the prefecture was vast. It was not an easy task to find the seals of the demons one by one. Therefore, the increase of his luck value had become extremely slow. Looking at the luck value that had exceeded 10,000, Qin Shujian's expression was a little uncertain. He was thinking about a serious matter. Now, his luck value had exceeded 10,000. If he piled it on a doctrine artifact, it could at least be upgraded to the level of a 4-seal doctrine artifact, and there would be a lot left. If he used it all, the level of the Yuan Sect's force would most likely be upgraded from a 5th level force to a 6th level force. A 6th level force. There would at least be a large number of airborne realm cultivators in the sect, and even prominent divine realm cultivators. But there were also great hidden dangers in doing so. And that was the Imperial Court. What level of force was the Imperial Court? According to Qin Shujian's guess, it was very likely to be a top 9th level force. Based on his understanding of the cultivation world, there had never been a force that had broken through to a 6th level force. In other words, there was no 6th level force among the current sects and forces. Perhaps it was difficult to upgrade to a 6th level force, or perhaps there had been a 6th level force, but later there was no more. As for why there was no more, this reason was somewhat thought-provoking. Put yourself in their shoes. If the Yuan sect was compared to the Imperial Court, a 6th level force that had emerged in the territory under their jurisdiction in just a few years would have the mentality of being out of control. For the Imperial Court, a 6th level force might not be worth paying attention to. Then, would the Imperial Court be able to ignore the 7th level, 8th level, and even the 9th level forces in the future? According to Qin Shujian's guess, if he was the ruler of the Great Zhao Empire, he would definitely not tolerate the existence of such an unstable factor and would definitely find ways to eliminate it. Unless this unstable factor had the strength to make people wary and not dare to act rashly. But the Yuan sect was now in front of the Imperial Court. It was still thousands of miles away from having the strength to make the Imperial Court wary and not dare to act rashly. Although a 6th level force can greatly increase the strength of the sect, it is also very likely to arouse the suspicion of the Imperial Court. This may not be a good thing. Although the situation is chaotic now, the Imperial Court is still in control of most of the situation. In the Baiyun Mansion, Marquis Baiyun has stabilized the situation. I can't take this risk now. After thinking about it, Qin Shujian suppressed the idea of upgrading to a 6th level force. For the current him, the Yuan sect could not be without. Without this sect that provided a stable source of life, if he had to rely on himself in the future, when would he be able to become a diviner? According to Qin Shujian's idea, if he wanted to make the imperial court wary, he had to at least have the strength of a mighty figure, just like how Marquis Bayun could intimidate the demon clan when he revealed the strength of a mighty figure. In a sense, only a mighty figure could be considered to have a certain amount of authority in the entire world. Thinking of this, Qin Shujian focused his attention on his attributes again. Luck value, 11327, more than 11,000 points of luck value were converted into 1 billion sources of life. Such a large amount of sources of life. It was enough for him to completely upgrade his realm to the God Martial Arts realm, and it was not as simple as just entering the God Martial Arts realm. Under the circumstance that he could not upgrade his force level, if he could convert luck value into sources of life, and then improve his strength, it would be the best choice. After all, nothing was more important than his own realm. Even if he could live a little longer, it was something to be happy about. However, before converting it into sources of life, Qin Shujian shifted his attention from the luck value to the special ability column. Behind the spiritual eye, there was still a plus sign that could be upgraded. Chapter 409. When he only had 1,000 luck points, Qin Shujian would not upgrade his spiritual eye. But if he had 10,000 luck points, he would seriously consider it. Ever since he obtained the spiritual eye, as his strength steadily increased, this special ability gradually became less useful. Only the ability to see through loyalty was left, except for this accident. For other functions like seeing through attributes, if the other party was masked or wearing a mask, he would not be able to see through it. And if the opponent was too strong, he could only see the name, and the rest of the attributes would be blank. As for the opponent whose realm was lower than his, he could see the attributes. But this was of no use at all. Those who were weaker than him, he could just kill them directly. What was the use of looking at the attributes? In general, if it was not for the ability to see through loyalty, the ability of the spiritual eye would have long been useless. So, with the abundant luck points, Qin Shujian also had the idea of upgrading his spiritual eye. He also wanted to see the upgraded spiritual eye. What kind of ability would it have? Thinking of this, Qin Shujian's thoughts moved, and the 1,000 luck points disappeared, replaced by the special ability column. The two words spiritual eye were violently distorted. Boom! A silent buzzing sound rang in his mind. At the same time, at this moment, there seemed to be thousands of gorgeous colors surging in the sky. The mighty purple aura came from afar, and faintly, it was 1,000 miles away. Qin Shujian sat cross-legged on the mountain peak, motionless. The originally dark eyes were now like bright stars, as if they could see through everything in the world. Roar! Roar! Shocking roars came from heaven and earth. It seemed ethereal and dreamy. It seemed to be real. In an instant, Qin Shujian seemed to see everything, but also seemed to see nothing. All kinds of strange phenomena seemed to appear in front of him, but also seemed to appear in an illusion. After a long time, the system's information appeared in his mind, causing him to completely wake up. Your spiritual eye has evolved. You have obtained a special ability, magical eye. All living things have their own characteristics. Some are hidden, some are soaring into the 9 heavens, some are crouching in the 9 underworlds. They are difficult to fathom. Today, I can observe the changes in the world with a single glance and see through the myriad of appearances of all living things. It's like the Son of Heaven gazing at Qi, and I can kill with a smile. A large amount of system information appeared in Qin Shujian's mind. After seeing the specific information, his expression finally changed. Dharma eyes, Qin Shujian murmured. He was also quite shocked, especially that line about observing the changes in heaven and earth, gaining insight into the myriad of living beings. It was like the Son of Heaven gazing at Qi, able to kill with a smile. This made him suddenly realize something. After the spiritual eye evolved into the Dharma eye, it was no longer a pure support ability, but a true means of killing enemies. However, the system did not explain in detail how to use the Dharma eye. Therefore, even though the introduction seemed to be very powerful, Qin Shujian himself did not know what the power of the Dharma eye was. Thinking of this, He withdrew his consciousness from his attribute panel and looked at the sky. Just like when he activated his spirit eye, his true essence slightly surged. The originally dark eyes were now as deep and bright as the stars. When he looked over again, he saw that Yizichin was in a daze. The sky, which was supposed to be clear and sunny, was now filled with a myriad of phenomena. The seven-colored light covered the sky, blocking out the light of the sun. This is heaven and earth barrier. When he saw the familiar colorful light, Qin Shujian immediately recognized it. That was the heaven and earth barrier that could only be seen when going to the limit of heaven and earth. As early as when he saw the heaven and earth barrier, he had guessed it. Perhaps the whole world was covered by the heaven and earth barrier, but ordinary people could not see it with their naked eyes, just like how they could see it when going to the limit of heaven and earth, but couldn't see it after leaving. But now, after the spiritual eye evolved into the Dharma eye, Qin Shujian found that he could already see the heaven and earth barrier that covered the sky. Just as he had guessed, the whole world, it was covered by the heaven and earth barrier. Faintly, a thought appeared in Qin Shujian's mind. Maybe the so-called heaven and earth barrier was a protective shell that protected this part of the world until now. Not long after this thought arose, it was dispelled by him. Thinking about these things now, in fact, there was no need to. Then Qin Shujian shifted his gaze and looked at several other places. What he saw, he could see yellow gas rising from several places. Those were the branches of the Yuan sect. And the Yuan sect under his feet just happened to have an extremely dense yellow gas rising. He saw that the yellow gas was like a yellow cloud that slowly rose to an extremely high position. Finally, it gathered together in his sight. Then, he saw an auspicious beast that looked like a qilin and was completely composed of yellow clouds roaring in the void. For auspicious clouds supported its body under its feet, which made the yellow cloud qilin look even more noble. When Qin Shujian looked at the qilin also looked at him. Its bell-like eyes revealed a hint of friendliness. It roared softly, as if it was greeting him. Seeing this, Qin Shujian also revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. When he saw the yellow cloud qilin, the information about it appeared in his mind, and he also understood what it was. Luck. That was the qilin that his Yuan sect's prosperous luck had manifested. Just by looking at the qilin that was close to 10 feet in size and more than half of its body had solidified, one could see that Yuan sect's luck had reached an extremely strong level. This was the symbol of Yuan sect's prosperous luck. Those with a strong luck. To put it bluntly, they could turn misfortunes into blessings. Generally, sects with prosperous luck would be able to recruit enough talented disciples to continue the legacy of the sect. Even the disciples who joined this sect could be taken care of by luck. When they encountered danger outside, there was a high probability that they could be resolved. It could be said that as long as one's luck was high enough, everything would go smoothly. If one's luck was not high enough, it would be difficult to get what one wanted. If one's luck was even lower, there was even a possibility of an unexpected disaster. When he saw the yellow cloud qilin, many things about luck appeared in Qin Shujian's mind. Now that Yuan sect's luck was flourishing, it proved that he had managed it well. As long as he did not deliberately seek death, at least for a long time, he would not have to worry about any problems. Subsequently, Qin Shujian moved his gaze away from Yuan sect and looked at the other places in the Liang Mountain spirit domain. Right now, Liang Mountain was the highest in the entire Liang Mountain spirit domain. Standing at the peak of Liang Mountain, it was enough for him to look down on everything. What entered his eyes? All of them were light green luck rising and condensing into auspicious beasts. However, without exception, they all lowered their heads and crawled towards Yuan sect, not daring to compete with the yellow cloud qilin. Green luck. It seems that the luck of the sects in the Liang Mountain spirit domain is normal. There won't be any problems in a short period of time. Qin Shujian thought in his heart. The yellow cloud was flourishing while the blue cloud was normal. The light green luck was neither good nor bad and was the most normal kind of luck. However, among these light green luck, there were a few that were a bit richer in color. With Qin Shujian's eyesight, he could roughly determine. Those were the directions of the Blue Cloud sect and the Heaven Blade sect. Immediately after, Qin Shujian then turned his gaze to the other major cities. He saw yellow clouds rising above the cities, but there were no yellow cloud auspicious beasts. They didn't seem to have any vitality, but the luck was condensed and didn't dissipate. It looked quite puzzling. The cities are backed by the imperial court, so the yellow cloud luck should belong to the imperial court. After all, the power with the highest luck is the yellow cloud. Qin Shujian understood. With the power of the great Zhao dynasty, it was reasonable for their luck to be at the yellow cloud level. However, seeing that the yellow cloud was dormant and didn't condense any auspicious beasts, it was a symbol of the fall of the human emperor. After all, the fall of the human emperor caused the world to be in turmoil. Although the luck of the great Zhao dynasty was flourishing, it should be dormant. When the new human emperor ascended the throne, the luck would be reborn. Thinking of this, Qin Shujian couldn't help but look at another location. That location. It was the direction of the central state prefecture. The true essence in his body surged wildly and gathered in his eyes. In an instant, his eyes turned into a galaxy that seemed to be able to see through everything in the world. It directly crossed hundreds of millions of miles and directly saw the central state prefecture. Boom! In just an instant, Qin Shujian let out a scream and the galaxy in his eyes collapsed. His eyes involuntarily closed and a faint trace of blood flowed down from his eyelids. Not only that, even his spiritual deity, which was almost 100 feet tall, was crazily shaking at this moment. It was as if there was an endless mighty force crushing down on him. This mighty force, it could easily crush the spiritual deity of a spiritual martial realm cultivator. The fourth grade golden lotus appeared, but it instantly shattered. Then, the dustless celestial robe appeared and quietly disappeared. Qin Shujian didn't care about the sharp pain in his eyes and immediately took out the 18 square array discs from his storage ring. A large array was instantly set up in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Thunder boomed in the sky and resounded throughout the entire Liang Mountain spirit region. The 18 high-grade spirit artifact array discs shook violently. Then, the large array shattered and the 18 square array discs scattered on the ground. Qin Shujian's body shook slightly. After spitting out blood, the mighty force finally disappeared. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Even after using all of his methods, Qin Shujian's mind was still heavily injured. After putting away the 18 square array discs, Qin Shujian tightly closed his eyes and stroked the array discs. He could clearly feel the cracks on them and couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. I was careless, he had to admit. He really had gotten carried away just now. After obtaining the Dharma Eye, he actually tried to pry into the foundation of the great Zhao dynasty's providence. Then, even if he crossed hundreds of millions of miles, he still suffered the backlash of the providence. If it weren't for the fact that his own methods weren't weak, that glance just now, he might have died from the backlash of the providence. After calming his mind, Qin Shujian didn't immediately open his eyes. Instead, he revealed a thought-provoking smile when he thought back to that fleeting glance. Chapter 410. Until now, Qin Shujian finally understood. Even if he had the Dharma Eye, he couldn't look around casually. If his spiritual eye looked around casually, it would at most be noticed by others and attract some hatred. If his Dharma Eye looked around casually, it would end up like what happened just now. That glance. It was even more terrifying than a diviner's attack. It broke through the defenses of 2 Dao artifacts in a row. Even a Monster King level expert could contend against the array disc. However, it didn't even last for a few breaths of time before the array shattered. Even the array disc shattered. Even so, after being weakened layer by layer, his spiritual spirit was still heavily injured. This was the first time Qin Shujian knew what kind of backlash would come from prying into the fate of a powerful existence. It was only because of his amazing methods that he was able to survive. Or else, even an ordinary diviner might not be able to survive that attack just now. Once bitten, twice shy. I still can't underestimate the people of the world. Qin Shujian said self-deprecatingly. Although the blood on his cheeks had been wiped away, his eyes were still tightly shut. He couldn't open them at will. That glance just now. In addition to his spiritual spirit being injured, his eyes were also heavily injured. It would take some time for him to recover from his injuries. In other words, in the short term, Qin Shujian was no different from a blind person. However, although his eyes couldn't see, his perception was still there. Using his perception to observe his surroundings was no different from using his naked eyes. Just as Qin Shujian was sitting cross-legged and silently absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to heal his injuries. As for the people in Yuan's sect, they were frightened by the commotion that had just occurred. The moment that terrifying force came, they felt as if the sky and earth were collapsing. Their minds trembled, and they didn't even dare to move. At that moment, whether it was the divine martial realm cultivators or other cultivators, they all felt as weak as ants. As for the collision of the two forces on the peak of Mount Liang, no one noticed it, because everything happened too quickly. Xiang Haogan only regained his senses now. As he took a deep breath, his fingers were slightly trembling. Where did that force come from? After the initial shock, doubts arose in his mind. In front of that power, Xiang Haogan felt his heart palpitate. Ever since he broke through to the god martial realm, he rarely felt this way. The last time he felt this way was 100 years ago when he felt it from a celestial being realm cultivator. Both of their auras were as vast as the abyss. But in comparison, although it was difficult for Xiang Haogan to discern whether it was strong or weak, there was still a voice in his heart telling him that the power just now was the most terrifying. It wasn't just Yuanzhong. Even the cold mountain city, which was not far away, was silent at this moment. It was as if many things had frozen. The higher one's cultivation was, the more he felt, the more he could sense how terrifying that power was. As for Wu Lang, who was temporarily staying in the city lord mansion, he was currently looking in the direction of Yuanzhong with a shocked expression. How could this be? How could Yuanzhong have such a terrifying power? Could this be the mighty means left behind by Qin Shujian before he was reincarnated? For a moment, many thoughts emerged in Wu Lang's mind. As an emissary of the imperial court, he had seen too many experts. That flash of power just now was at least at the level of a mighty figure. One had to know, even in the entire Great Zhao Empire, there were only a handful of mighty figures. Now, a sect that did not even have a celestial being realm cultivator had the power of a mighty figure. According to Wu Lang's thoughts, only Qin Shujian, the reincarnated mighty figure on the surface, could possibly emit such power. After all, no matter what, the other party was the reincarnation of a mighty figure. If he used the means left behind in his previous life, it was normal to cause some fluctuations. Furthermore, that surge of energy left as quickly as it came. The information that Wu Lang was able to obtain was also limited. In the lion-tiger plain, just now, Niu Dali seemed to have felt a strong threat and instantly woke up from his deep sleep. His huge eyes were filled with shock and uncertainty. But when he woke up, that power had long since disappeared. So, Niu Dali was only puzzled for a moment before he dispelled the threat in his heart and went back to sleep. For him, there was nothing better than sleeping. Especially now, Niu Dali felt more and more sleepy. He did not even have the thought of moving. If there was anything he wished for the most right now, it was probably to sleep for decades or centuries without anyone disturbing him. This was also one of the advantages of the Yao clan. In the same realm, the lifespan of the Yao clan was much longer than that of the human clan. The lifespan of the human clan in the spirit martial realm was only about 1,000 years. The limit of the Yao clan was 3,000 years. But correspondingly, the long lifespan of the Yao clan also meant that the Yao clan's strength was generally slower than that of the human clan. This was also a way to balance things out. At the peak of Mount Liang, 5 days passed. Qin Shujian did not move at all. He continued to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to recover from his injuries. Fortunately, the spiritual energy of Mount Liang was dense, and he had the help of spirit stones. Cultivating here for a day was more effective than cultivating outside for 10 days to half a month. In the 5 days, although his injuries had not completely recovered, they were close to 80 to 90%. Another 2 days passed. Only then did Qin Shujian open his tightly shut eyes and let out a long sigh of relief. Immediately, a white gas shot out from his mouth and turned into a fierce gust of wind that soared into the sky. Rumble. A thunderous sound rang out. It was as if a thunderbolt had struck on a sunny day. "I've finally recovered." A relaxed smile appeared on Qin Shujian's face. Then, he immediately restrained it, and his expression became solemn. Since his injuries had recovered, the next thing to do was to increase his strength. What had happened earlier had made him realize that there was still a huge gap between his strength and that of the top powerhouses. He had only taken a peek at the fate of the great Zhao nation. He had directly suffered a strong backlash. If he had been a bit weaker at that time, or if he had fewer defensive methods, he would have died. The people of the Yuan sect probably would not have thought of that. When their sect master went into seclusion, he would suddenly go into seclusion and die. The reason for that was because he was not strong enough. If he was strong enough to resist the backlash, how could such a thing have happened? He then looked at his own attributes. In the special ability column, there was no longer a plus sign behind his Dharma eye. After a simple glance, Qin Shujian's gaze moved away from it and landed on the luck value. Originally, there were more than 11,000 luck value. After consuming 1,000 points, there were still slightly more than 10,000 left. Immediately, with a thought from Qin Shujian, all the 7,500 luck value disappeared. Then, his life source increased from the original 30 million to 780 million. The increase of his life source. Finally, there was a plus sign behind his cultivation technique that could be upgraded. Without any hesitation, Qin Shujian immediately consumed 750 million life source to upgrade the remaining 5 cultivation techniques to the level of perfection of the spiritual martial arts section. This process, it was completed almost instantly. In an instant, boom, there was a strong explosion in his dantian. A huge amount of vital essence instantly accumulated there, causing it to reach a state of overflowing. The bright king hellfire that was rooted in his dantian. At this time, it was also swaying more intensely as the vital essence skyrocketed. At the same time, a wave of pure energy that was even purer than when he had devoured dozens of demons surged and directly entered the spiritual spirit in his mind. The skyrocketing power. Qin Shujian could no longer suppress himself. Of course, he had no intention of suppressing this feeling. A spiritual deity with a height of 970 feet appeared in the void. When the spirit god appeared, a dreadful might spread in all directions and attracted the attention of many people. Then, under the horrified gazes of these people, the spiritual deity seemed to be constantly growing taller. However, due to the great distance between them, no one was able to accurately capture the changes in its growth. However, they could clearly feel that the powerful spiritual god's energy was unceasingly attacking their minds. Could it be that Qin Shujian has already broken through to the god martial arts realm? Wu Lang thought of a rumor he had heard before. Previously, he had scoffed at it and did not believe that someone could break through from the spirit martial arts realm to the god martial arts realm in less than 2 years. Even if the other party was the reincarnation of a mighty figure, it would be the same. But now, seeing the spiritual spirit that was nearly 100 feet tall, Wu Lang thought that he should believe it. After all, 100 feet spiritual spirit. He had never heard of anyone who could reach 100 feet spiritual spirit in the spirit martial arts realm. In Wu Lang's memory, for thousands of years, even the most talented person seemed to have a spiritual spirit of about 25 feet. After that, he would break through to the god martial arts realm. Qin Shujian didn't notice the commotion he had caused at all. Now he had put all his attention on the attribute panel. All 7 cultivation methods had been upgraded to the completion of the spirit martial arts realm. That was to say, the next step would be to break through to the god martial arts realm. But before the breakthrough, what Qin Shujian had to do was to integrate all he had learned. So, he directly opened the fusion panel that he had not seen for a long time. Qin Shujian had only used the fusion panel twice since he had unearthed it. The first time was when he broke through to the true martial arts realm. The second time was when he broke through to the spirit martial arts realm. Now, it was the third time. It was also the critical point for him to break through from the spirit martial arts realm to the god martial arts realm. Although Qin Shujian did not often use the fusion panel, he still skillfully dragged all the 7 cultivation methods he had learned into it. Immediately, a familiar system message appeared in his mind. Then, Qin Shujian directly chose the fusion panel. Very quickly, the 300 luck points disappeared. You have consumed the Guiyuan ancestral scripture. You have consumed the flying immortal temple Dao scripture. You have consumed the raging flame technique. You have consumed the ghost god meditation sutra. You have consumed the holy visualization sutra. You have consumed 300 luck points. You have obtained an unknown cultivation method. Please name it. You have obtained the 31st level of the unknown cultivation method. Your strength has improved. Chapter 411. Boom! Suddenly, the dark purple thunderclouds in the sky condensed in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, a lightning pillar as thick as a bucket came down, as if it wanted to destroy the powerful spiritual god. Seeing this, Qin Shujian didn't find it strange and didn't even resist. He stood in the air and took the lightning pillar's attack. Lightning tribulation body tempering. This was a necessary step to break through to the god martial realm. Although his cultivation technique had broken through, the spiritual god hadn't completely transformed. Only when the lightning tribulation disappeared would it truly change. If one had to endure something to break through to the spirit martial realm in the spirit domain, then it would be the scene in front of him. Every lightning tribulation that came down was at least at the peak of the prominent divine realm. The later it was, the stronger it became. Until the 3rd lightning tribulation, it had already reached the god martial realm. If other cultivators wanted to break through to the god martial realm, they either had to use the spiritual god or use other methods to resist. No matter if it was in the spirit domain or a large domain. To break through to the god martial realm, one had to endure a lightning tribulation. The only difference was that the lightning tribulation he had to endure in spirit realm was much more terrifying than the lightning tribulation he had to endure in a major realm. This was also a test in disguise. Because although the shackles of the spirit domain were subtle and not much different from a large domain, it was still within the scope of the spirit domain. If the power of the god martial realm appeared, then the shackles of the spirit domain would be broken. Although it wouldn't attract the wrath of heaven, it would attract the warning of heaven and earth. Breaking through to the god martial realm would cause the power of the lightning tribulation to increase. Boom! Boom! The lightning tribulation fell. The 100 feet tall spiritual god stood in the air and didn't move at all. Instead, with each attack, a trace of pure yang energy was left in the spiritual god, causing the spiritual god to slowly transform. Although the lightning tribulation was strong, but that was only relative to ordinary peak vision domain great cultivators. For Qin Shujian's 100 feet tall spiritual god, it was more terrifying than a normal god martial realm cultivator. How could this lightning tribulation threaten it? Just as the lightning tribulation was gathering, the entire Mount Liang spirit domain could see the huge thunderclouds in the sky and the terrifying aura that each bolt of tribulation lightning emitted. Although the Liang Mountain Spirit Protectorate was a spirit protectorate, it was actually just a combination of a few true protectorates. It was far inferior to the other spirit protectorates. Therefore, even if the thundercloud wasn't that big, it could still be detected by other people in spirit realm. Lightning tribulation? Some cultivators were shocked and confused. Not everyone knew what kind of changes would occur after breaking through to the god martial arts realm. To put it bluntly, 1 or 2 years ago, the Liang Mountain Spirit Protectorate had only been a true dominion. There hadn't even been a spirit martial realm cultivator in the local area, let alone a divine martial realm cultivator. Many people didn't know. Breaking through to the god martial arts realm would lead to a thunder tribulation. However, now that the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain had been promoted, more and more foreign cultivators had arrived. Some of these cultivators were quite knowledgeable, so they naturally knew what the lightning tribulation represented. The lightning tribulation of the god martial realm? Someone is breaking through to the divine martial realm in the Liang Mountain Spirit region. That's the direction of the origin sect. Could it be that the sect master of the origin sect is breaking through to the divine martial realm? 1,000 feet spiritual deity. How could he only break through to the divine martial realm now? Many people were surprised and bewildered in their hearts as they looked at the thunder clouds in the sky and the 1,000 feet tall spiritual god. They were all stunned on the spot, especially the cultivators of the Liang Mountain City. At this moment, when they saw the 1,000 feet tall spirit deity and the scene of the tribulation lightning tempering it, they were even more astonished. At that moment, a single sentence appeared in everyone's mind. How could it be? In their opinion, Qin Shujian should have broken through to the divine martial realm long ago. But now, he was clearly just about a breakthrough. Originally, breaking through to the divine martial realm wasn't a problem. After all, cultivators with talent would eventually reach this stage. But to say that 1,000 feet spiritual deity was still in the spirit martial realm was too much. Hiss. 1,000 feet spiritual deity is still in the spirit martial realm? The human race once had such an expert. Someone couldn't help but exclaim. After he finished speaking, no one around him paid attention to him. 1,000 feet spiritual deity. In the thousands of years of the Great Zhao, no one had heard of anyone in the spirit martial realm who could condense 1,000 feet spiritual deity, because that was simply impossible. The current scene made them feel like they were in a dream. As for Wu Lang, at this moment, he was completely stunned. He quietly looked at the spiritual deity in the sky, who was constantly enduring the lightning tribulation. For a moment, he didn't know what to think. Spirit martial realm? Divine martial realm? To be honest, he was a little confused now. He didn't understand what realm Qin Shujian was in. At this moment, the lightning tribulation continued to fall. The pure young aura left in the spiritual deity became stronger and stronger. As time went on, the power of the lightning tribulation also became stronger. If the first dozen or so lightning tribulations were equal to the full strength attack of an ordinary divine martial realm cultivator, then the power of the latter lightning tribulations had already exceeded this range. Gradually, Qin Shujian's expression also became serious. The 1,000 feet spiritual deity in the sky gradually turned from an illusion to a real one. But under the bombardment of the lightning tribulation, it showed signs of collapsing. Is the lightning tribulation for breaking through to the divine martial realm also strong? A doubt arose in Qin Shujian's mind. If every cultivator who broke through to the divine martial realm would encounter such a strong lightning tribulation, even if they had a Taoist artifact to protect themselves, 99% of the cultivators would be finished. So, Qin Shujian absolutely didn't believe that other cultivators would encounter such a powerful lightning tribulation. Otherwise, the number of divine martial realm cultivators in the world would be reduced by at least 90%, causing the changes in front of him. He guessed that it should be related to the 1,000-feet spiritual deity. The stronger the spiritual deity was during the breakthrough, the stronger the power of the lightning tribulation. Although the spiritual deity could absorb part of the pure yang energy every time the lightning tribulation struck, making it stronger and stronger. But the speed of the spiritual deity's strengthening was not comparable to the speed of the lightning tribulation strengthening. At least the spiritual deity had a gradual cycle. The lightning tribulation directly and violently became stronger. Until now, Qin Shujian couldn't remember how many lightning tribulations had fallen. Anyway, the power of each lightning tribulation was enough to blast a cultivator who had just entered the divine martial realm to pieces. As for those cultivators who hadn't really broken through to the divine martial realm, they had no way to survive. It was only because his 1,000-feet spiritual deity was there that he could hold on until now. Boom! As another lightning tribulation fell, the entire spiritual deity seemed to explode. Qin Shujian's face suddenly turned pale. When he looked at the spiritual deity again, it was already showing signs of collapse. He couldn't hold on. If it was still okay before, then the power of the lightning tribulation was so strong that even he couldn't hold on. Without hesitation, Qin Shujian immediately took out the 4th-grade golden lotus. A golden lotus bloomed in the sky and directly floated at the top of the spiritual deity. Then, it silently offset the power of the lightning tribulation. The golden lotus trembled. Every lightning tribulation bombarded it, causing the lotus leaves to tremble. Wisps of pure yang energy fell along the golden lotus and seeped into the spiritual deity. However, as the power of the lightning tribulation continued to increase, the fourth-grade golden lotus also showed signs of being unable to withstand it. Immediately, with a thought, Qin Shujian expended 500 luck points and injected them into the Tier 4 golden lotus. In an instant, the golden lotus bloomed. After receiving 500 luck points, the fourth-grade golden lotus directly transformed into a sixth-grade golden lotus. A huge, illusory golden lotus bloomed, as vast as the thunderclouds. But soon, the illusory golden lotus dissipated and turned into a sixth-grade golden lotus, quietly floating above the spiritual deity's head. A sixth-grade golden lotus, a three-seal Dao artifact. And it wasn't as simple as an ordinary three-seal Dao artifact. If a fifth-grade golden lotus could enter the three-seal Dao artifact, a sixth-grade golden lotus could be considered a stronger three-seal Dao artifact. A three-seal Dao artifact. And it was a defense-oriented three-seal Dao artifact. It had a strong defensive power that even a peak divine martial arts cultivator would find difficult to break. So, with the protection of the sixth-grade golden lotus, the following lightning tribulation would be much easier. Boom, boom, boom. The lightning tribulation continued to fall. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. Although the power of the lightning tribulation was constantly increasing, it didn't affect the sixth-grade golden lotus much. When the last lightning tribulation fell, the originally 100 feet tall spiritual deity seemed to have undergone some kind of transformation. It directly soared to 200 feet, and the terrifying power of divine will instantly swept in all directions. At this moment, in the entire Liang Mountain spirit domain, no matter how strong the experts were, when the spiritual deity in their minds was swept by the divine will, the spiritual deity hidden in their minds trembled and had an impulse to worship. The 200 feet tall spiritual deity stood upright, as if a god had descended to the mortal world, overlooking everything in the world. Just as everyone was looking at each other speechlessly, only then did they see the spiritual deity disappear. The originally pervasive power also disappeared without a trace. The spiritual deity returned to the body. Qin Shujian's physical body had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. His flesh, blood, bones, and internal organs had become incomparably tight. A dragon's body appeared on his back, and waves of dragon roars could be heard. However, it was different from before. Now, the dragon's body was no longer a single dragon's body. Instead, it had evolved into 4 limbs and a head. It was like a primordial ferocious beast, lurking within his body. As Qin Shujian moved his hands and feet, waves of terrifying power spread out, as if it could destroy everything at any time. After breaking through to the divine martial realm, the spiritual deity had undergone a transformation, and so had his physical body. His foundation was deep to begin with. At this moment, after the enhancement of the transformation, Qin Shujian found that his strength had reached an unimaginable level. The divine martial realm. He took a deep breath. Suddenly, he saw the wind and clouds reverse. Like a giant beast swallowing heaven and earth, a vast amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth immediately swarmed over. Facing such a strange phenomenon, Qin Shujian had a clearer understanding of his own strength. An ordinary divine martial realm definitely wouldn't be so strong. The reason why he could reach such a level, it was because he had accumulated his foundation to the limit before, and after a transformation, he had such power. However, what really made him happy was the divine martial realm, a lifespan of 1,000 to 3,000 years. Chapter 412. Divine Martial Realm. He could already break through the 1,000-year limit. It could be considered a different type of longevity, even if this longevity was 1,000 to 3,000 years. However, this was already enough to make many people scramble for it. Feeling the surging vitality in his body, Qin Shujian suddenly realized that he had unknowingly gained the ability to experience the vicissitudes of life. 1,000 years. If it was an ordinary person, they could already live for more than 10 lifetimes. Not everyone could live to be 100 years old. 1,000 years. If there was a reincarnation cycle in the world, then it should be more than 10 lifetimes. However, 1,000 years of life was only the threshold of the divine martial realm. Although Qin Shu Jian couldn't accurately feel how long his life was, he could vaguely know. His life. It was definitely not as simple as 1,000 years. Subsequently, Qin Shu Jian looked at his status panel. Name: Qin Shu Jian. Title: Liangshan Region Lord. Identity: Sect Master of Yuan Sect. Affiliation: Yuan Sect. Faction Level: Level 5 Realm, 10th level of Divine Martial Realm, Liangshan Region, Realm +9. Yuan Sect, Realm +5, Cultivation Technique, 31st level of Gui Yuan Ancestral Canon, Level 1 Ancient Immortal Body, Level 1 Impenetrable, Level 1 Red Lotus of Purgation, High-Grade Divine Rank, Martial Arts, 5 Elements, 8 Trigram Steps, Entering Tao, 7 Leaf Flower Piercing Palm. Entering Tao, Great Desolate Demon Suppressing Seal, plus 1 with the Heavens, Middle Grade Divine Rank, Golden Immortal Soul Shattering Chant, plus Peak of Perfection, Low Grade Divine Rank, Special Martial Arts, Celestial Light Alchemy Tome, Alchemy Grandmaster, Forging Ancestral Canon, Forging Grandmaster, Array Grandmaster, Special Ability, Dharma Eye, Blade Intent, 20%, Life Source, 236522235 Luck Value, 3027. These were his current attributes. After breaking through to the Divine Martial Realm, with the title of Liangshan Region Lord and the power of Yuan Sect, it could be said that, in the Liangshan region, Qin Shujian's realm was directly raised to the peak of the Divine Martial Realm. However, this was only the peak of the Divine Martial Realm on the surface. There was still a certain difference from the true peak of the Divine Martial Realm. But these weren't important things. What really caught Qin Shujian's attention? It was the cultivation method column. When he saw that the Gui Yuan Ancestral Canon was a high-grade divine rank artifact, a smile finally appeared on his face. My face has been black for so many times, and now it's finally red. When Qin Shujian saw the words high-grade divine rank, he felt really comfortable. There was no other way. There was a huge difference between a mid-low grade cultivation technique and a high-grade cultivation technique. Not to mention other things, just in the spirit martial realm. Comparing a low-grade cultivation method to a high-grade cultivation method, it was equivalent to upgrading 2 high-grade cultivation methods to perfection. Only then would it barely be enough to upgrade a low-grade cultivation method to perfection. He had fused several cultivation techniques together. It was only now that he had finally fused the high-grade God-ranked origin returning ancestral scripture. However, Qin Shujian also noticed that after the fusion of the Gui Yuan ancestral scripture, the special traits of the 7 cultivation methods had all disappeared and were replaced by 3 brand new special traits. Immortal Ancient Body, Impenetrable by All Magic, Red Lotus of Purgation, the Immortal Body of the Wisdom King, the Karmic Fire of the Wisdom King, and the Will of the Gods had all disappeared. Immortal Ancient Body. Looking at the attribute panel, Qin Shujian could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in his body. The current him. In terms of physical strength, he was much stronger than before the breakthrough, although he had not really tested it. But Qin Shujian knew in his heart that in terms of physical strength, most of the demon clans of the same realm were not as good as him. As for the so-called impenetrable by all magic, he had some guesses in his heart. Finally, Qin Shujian's gaze fell on the 3rd special trait, Red Lotus of Purgation. With a thought, when he stretched out his palm, a wave of power gushed out from his dantian, and then a red lotus made of flames lay there quietly. The red lotus was enchanting. It was gorgeous and dazzling. But when the red lotus appeared, the void around his palm was slightly distorted, as if it was enduring an extremely terrifying power. Seeing this, Qin Shujian clenched his fist, and the red lotus instantly disappeared. The karmic fire of the Wisdom King evolved into the red lotus of Purgation. I wonder if it still has the means to refine the demons of the demon clans and turn them into energy. If it doesn't, then it's a big loss. His face did not look too good. If it was the evolution of other special traits, then it would be fine. But if the karmic fire of the Wisdom King evolved and disappeared, Qin Shujian would really have no place to cry. After all, the karmic fire of the Wisdom King could directly refine the demons of the demon clans and turn them into energy that could be absorbed by oneself and then increase one's strength. It could be described as shocking. If there was no karmic fire of the Wisdom King, even if he had deduced all 7 techniques to the completion stage of the spiritual martial chapter, he would not be able to raise the spirit god to 100 feet. It was even more impossible. When he broke through to the god martial realm, the spirit god would reach a terrifying level of 200 feet. When ordinary prominent divine stage cultivators broke through to the god martial realm, their spirit god would only be around 400 to 500 feet. 200 feet. Only those who had reached the 7th level of the divine martial realm could reach that level. Even, some people could only reach this step when they reached the peak of the god martial realm. Qin Shujian was not completely sure whether the Red Lotus of Purgation had the ability to contain the karmic fire of the Wisdom King. But if he wanted to test it, he could not find a target now, so he could only temporarily suppress the doubts in his heart. Immediately, Qin Shujian looked at the remaining 3,000+ luck points, then thought for a while, and then injected 500 luck points into the dustless immortal robe. In an instant, the dustless immortal robe also transformed from a 2-seal Dao artifact to a 3-seal Dao artifact. At this point, he was finally truly at ease. With 2 3-seal Dao artifacts to protect him, even if a diviner stage cultivator personally attacked him, it would be enough to defend him. Subsequently, Qin Shujian took out the 18 square array discs from the storage ring, only to see that a few of the array discs were already full of cracks, obviously damaged by the backlash from before. The array discs were damaged. Many of the inscriptions inscribed inside were also damaged. In this way, although the master-level array inscribed inside the array discs would not be broken, its power would be greatly reduced. Therefore, what he had to do was to repair the broken array discs. Fortunately, there were still some leftover materials in the storage ring, enough to repair the array discs, but it would take some time. In the Yuan sect, after Qin Shujian broke through to the god martial realm, the disciples in the sect seemed to have received a boost. After all, the stronger their sect master was, for them, the more they felt a sense of belonging in their hearts. In the inherited martial hall, "I wonder when sect master Qin will come out of seclusion?" Wu Lang asked in a deep voice. This was already the 3rd time he had come. Ever since Qin Shujian broke through to the god martial realm a few days ago, Wu Lang would come to the Yuan sect once a day in order to see Qin Shujian. Until now, it had been about 10 days since he came to the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain. If this continued, Wu Lang had no choice but to return to the Central State Prefecture. This mission was not completed. Even if he did not receive any punishment when he returned, there would not be any benefits. Moreover, the commotion caused by Qin Shujian's breakthrough made him want to find out what was going on. Wu Lang really wanted to know. Had he broken through to the god martial realm a long time ago? Or had he broken through during the Thunder Tribulation a few days ago? 100 feet spiritual deity. A 200 feet spiritual deity. Thinking back to the scene a few days ago, he still felt a little dizzy. There was no other way. That scene was really too shocking. Although Wu Lang was also a great cultivator of the god martial realm, and not the kind who had just entered the god martial realm, in terms of spiritual deity power, he might not be able to reach Qin Shujian's level. In the main hall, hearing Wu Lang's question, Zheng Fong shook his head and said, "Sect Master has been in seclusion in the forbidden area and has never come out. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you." Sigh. Wu Lang sighed and felt helpless in his heart. It was also at this moment. He seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look outside the main hall, just as a green-robed man stepped in. It was a portrait of Qin Shujian. Wu Lang had seen it before, so when he saw the other party, he immediately stood up from his seat, cupped his hands and said, "Great Envoy Wu Lang greets Sect Master Qin." At this moment, Zheng Fong also saw Qin Shujian's arrival and also stood up to salute. "Greetings, Sect Master. Sit down." Qin Shujian nodded and immediately walked past the two of them to the main seat. On the other side, Wu Lang looked at Qin Shujian, who passed by him, with a look of surprise and doubt in his eyes. When Qin Shujian sat down, he couldn't help but ask, "Sect Master Qin, Are you the spiritual deity Pure Young external incarnation? You have good eyesight. Qin Shujian sat down and said with a faint smile, Hiss. This wasn't a direct answer, but it made Wu Lang suck in a breath of air. Spiritual deity Pure Young. External incarnation. This was a method that only the God martial realm could have. If the spirit martial realm was only to nurture the spiritual deity, and even at the vision divine stage, the spiritual deity could not leave the body, then after breaking through to the God martial realm, the spiritual deity could be separated and walk in the world like an external incarnation. But to do this, one had to go through the thunder tribulation and let the spiritual deity be tainted with pure yang aura to be able to break away from the shackles of the body. But the difference was, even if the spiritual deity who had just broken through to the God martial realm had a pure yang aura, there was still an invisible illusion. However, Qin Shujian in front of him gave Wu Lang the feeling that he was like a real person. If it wasn't for the faint pure yang aura emitted from his body, he wouldn't have dared to think in this direction. After all, it was easy for the spiritual deity to be pure yang, and it was also easy for the spiritual deity to leave the body and turn into an external incarnation. But to reach the level of Qin Shujian, it would take at least hundreds of years of polishing in the God martial realm to be possible. Even he couldn't do it to this extent. Thinking of this, Wu Lang's heart trembled again, and his expression became respectful. He cupped his hands and said, Sect Master Qin's methods are amazing. I think it won't be long before there will be another diviner in the world. Although his words were flattering, they were also his true thoughts. With the speed of the other party's advancement, would it take a long time to break through to the diviner realm? Regarding this, Wu Lang couldn't help but secretly sigh at the terrifying background of the reincarnated Almighty. Chapter 413. In the hall, Wu Lang was no longer smiling. Instead, he looked more solemn. Even if Qin Shujian wasn't his true self and was only a spirit god incarnation, it was still enough to intimidate ordinary God martial realm cultivators. As for Zheng Feng, he was shocked. He was also a little shocked, and he looked at Qin Shujian with a little more respect. A spirit god incarnation. Although he had not broken through to the divine martial realm, he knew what kind of strength was needed to reach this level. He had not even attained the prominent sage realm. His own sect master had already reached such an unimaginable level. In comparison, Zheng Feng felt that he was still lacking. On the other side, Qin Shujian also looked at Wu Lang and said with a faint smile, May I know the reason for your visit, emissary? There are devil disasters everywhere. I wonder if Sect Master Qin has heard about this. Is there such a thing? Upon hearing that, Qin Shujian was shocked. He was not pretending. He had not expected that such a thing would happen while he was in seclusion. Wu Lang was not surprised when he saw Qin Shujian's shocked expression. He immediately explained, Now that the otherworldly man has destroyed the True Dominion seal, evil spirits have broken out of the seal in all 13 prefectures except the Baiyun prefecture. Now that there are devil disasters everywhere, the imperial court has sent troops to suppress them. However, there are many evil spirits that have broken out of the seal. Although some of them have not broken out of the seal, there are still some hidden dangers. As he spoke, he paused for a moment and coughed softly before saying, Although there are many experts in the imperial court, Sect Master Qin should be aware of the current situation in the world. Furthermore, the True Dominion's evil spirits are extraordinary. There are not many experts who can deal with them. Your Majesty, I heard that Sect Master Qin is an expert who has broken the shackles of the True Dominion. You have also killed the moon-devouring Demon King in the Fallen Moon Prefecture's Chongning True Dominion and wiped out the True Dominion's evil spirits in the Baiyun Prefecture. Therefore, I hope that Sect Master Qin can help the Imperial Court eliminate the hidden dangers of the devil disasters. Of course, as long as Sect Master Qin is willing to help, the Imperial Court will be willing to pay the corresponding compensation. After saying that, Wu Lang remained silent. He looked at Qin Shujian's expression and waited for his answer. On the other side, Qin Shujian finally knew the purpose of Wu Lang's visit. Kill the demons. It had to be said that he just happened to need it, and the other party just happened to deliver it to his doorstep. Now that all the True Dominion evil devils in the Baiyun Prefecture had been killed, it was almost impossible to obtain any more luck points. As for the other prefectures, it wasn't an easy task either. Therefore, when Qin Shujian consumed most of his luck points to break through, he was also troubled by this matter. But he didn't expect this. It was such a coincidence that Wu Lang delivered himself to his doorstep. If Qin Shujian was asked if he was willing to help, he would definitely agree without hesitation. However, being willing was one thing, but no matter how willing he was, there had to be a process. Furthermore, looking at Wu Lang's expression, he could also guess that the imperial court was now in a terrible state. Or else, they wouldn't send anyone to Yuan sect either. However, from Qin Shujian's point of view, given the imperial court's foundation, the demon disaster would at most be a little difficult to deal with. After all, besides the human clan, there were also players in the world. As long as there were a few sane people in the imperial court, they would know to borrow the strength of the players to deal with the demon disaster. The only problem was the length of time and the losses. Therefore, when Wu Lang mentioned the evil devils, Qin Shujian had no intention of rejecting him. Killing the evil devils was good. Qin Shujian loved killing the evil devils the most. However, even if he wanted to kill the evil devils, he couldn't agree directly. He could still fight for some benefits. Killing the evil devils is the duty of the human clan. However, Qin Shujian suddenly smiled and asked, "What kind of reward is the imperial court willing to pay?" As long as Sect Master Qin is willing to help, the imperial court will definitely not disappoint you. Wu Lang smiled as well. Based on the other party's words, he already knew that this matter was considered a success. As for the price to pay, that was the imperial court's own matter. It had nothing to do with a small envoy like him. With the imperial court's foundation, it wouldn't be difficult to satisfy one person. Hearing this, Qin Shujian didn't dwell on this matter too much. Just as he thought, with the imperial court's foundation and reputation, they wouldn't make empty promises. The reward would be late, but it would never be absent. Thinking of this, Qin Shujian cupped his hands and said, "How does the imperial court want this Qin to start?" "Sect Master Qin, please don't be impatient. After this matter is reported, I will inform Sect Master of the details." "All right, then this Qin will wait for your news." After saying this, Qin Shujian's body suddenly became illusory. In the next instant, he disappeared into the distance. Spirit God Incarnation. He could walk through the world like a real person and silently travel thousands of miles. Cultivators who reached this level, only then would he be able to truly kill someone from 1,000 miles away. Although the prominent divine stage could be called a grand cultivator, strictly speaking, only after breaking through to the divine martial stage could one be called a grand cultivator and be qualified to become a grand cultivator. Seeing this, Wu Lang secretly sighed in his heart. At the peak of Mount Liang, Qin Shujian was repairing the array disc when his body suddenly shook slightly. The aura on his body also became thicker. It was also at this moment that the last rune landed, completely repairing the broken disc array. Killing demons is really like dozing off. Someone just happened to give me a pillow. Whatever I lack, it comes. After putting away the array disc, Qin Shujian was in a good mood. Even though he still had more than 2,000 luck points, it was still not enough to go around. If he used it to upgrade a 3-seal Dao artifact, he could upgrade a few. But no matter how powerful a 3-seal Dao artifact was, it was still limited. A Dao artifact of this level could threaten a divine martial stage cultivator, but it was difficult to threaten a heaven stage cultivator, unless the Dao artifact reached 4-seal or above. Or else, no matter how many 3-seal Dao artifacts there were, it would be difficult to qualitatively change after reaching a critical point. As for converting life force, more than 2,000 luck points could at most be converted into more than 200 million life force. It was still a problem whether it could upgrade the origin returning ancestral cannon by one stage. He shook his head. Qin Shujian immediately got up and went down the peak of Mount Liang, walking towards the forging hall. Although he had the spirit god incarnation, he did not need to do it himself most of the time. But Qin Shujian was still used to doing it himself. Although the spirit god incarnation seemed light, it was not really that good. Not to mention that the spirit god incarnation was much weaker than the original body. Once the spirit god incarnation was destroyed, it would also be heavily injured. So, even though there were many divine martial stage cultivators, very few people would use the spirit god incarnation to travel the world. Because if they were not careful, the spirit god incarnation would be destroyed. Then, they would not even have a place to cry. The current foundry hall was much larger than before. With the new sect rules, some disciples who did not have the confidence to kill monsters above their level would choose to learn an auxiliary method to deal with the assessment. In the entire Origin sect, there were only the alchemy, forging, and formation halls. Among them, the formation hall also needed to fight. Only the alchemy and forging halls were considered true auxiliary professions. So, many disciples rushed into the two halls, wanting to learn an extra method. In this way, this caused the number of disciples in the forging hall to skyrocket. As a result, the original forging hall could no longer accommodate so many people and had to be expanded. When Qin Shujian arrived, there were many disciples in the forging hall. When they saw the sect master, they could not help but bow and salute. Greetings, sect master. Among these people, there were naturally players as well. Originally, with the character of players, they would not be used to doing things like this. However, the longer they stayed in the game, the more these people were subtly influenced. Their style of doing things was also closer to the native humans of this world. Other than the ability to continuously resurrect, there was not much difference between players and the people in the game world. After all, the game had started for more than 3 years. It was enough for many people to treat this place as a second world. One had to know that in an ordinary person's life, how many 3 years could they spend? For many people, 3 years was enough to experience many things. Although the flow of time in the game world was different from the real world, and it was naturally impossible for so much time to pass in the real world, it was 3 years in the game. This could not be faked. It was also at this moment. Shin Yuqing also received the news of Qin Shujian's arrival. He walked out of the inner hall and cupped his hands. I didn't know that the sect master was coming. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. While speaking, he did not immediately ask Qin Shujian why he was here. Instead, he turned sideways and said, Sect master, please follow me inside and have a seat. Okay. Then, the two of them walked into the inner hall one after another. As for the other disciples, when they saw this, some doubts arose in their hearts. They did not understand why Qin Shujian suddenly came here. Since the establishment of the forging hall until now, the number of times this sect master had come to the forging hall could be counted on one hand. Even those who had joined the forging hall for more than half a year had not seen Qin Shujian come even once. Now that they suddenly saw him, it was inevitable that they would be a little curious. Just as the others were puzzled, Qin Shujian had already entered the inner hall with Shan Yuqing. Qin Shujian was there. Shin Yuqing, the hall master, naturally could not sit in the main seat. Instead, he consciously sat in the seat below the main seat. As for the original main seat, naturally, it was Qin Shujian who was sitting in the main seat. After sitting down, Shin Yuqing could not help but ask curiously, Sect Master, why did you suddenly come here this time? Now, in the Forging Hall's warehouse, how many materials above the 6th level are there? Hearing this, Shin Yuqing pondered for a while and said, there are about 400 pounds of materials above the 6th level, but most of them are of the 6th and 7th level. As for the 8th and 9th level, they are relatively rare. Count the value of these materials. How many contribution points are they worth? I want all of them. Chapter 414. When Qin Shujian arrived, Shin Yuqing had guessed that he was here for the materials. After all, he had come here a few times. Basically, it was for this matter. However, after hearing Qin Shujian's words, he was still stunned for a moment. Then, he said, Sect Master, if we take away all the 6th grade and above materials from the warehouse, then the forging hall will be short of materials in a short period of time. 6th grade materials. High-grade blacksmiths would occasionally need them, no matter what. The forging hall also needed some high-grade materials as backup. Otherwise, when they needed them, they would find that the warehouse was already an empty shell. Qin Shujian said, As for the forging hall, as long as we issue some tasks, it will not take long for the materials to be replenished. Then please follow me, Sect Master. Hearing this, Shun Yuqing did not insist. In the end, although he was the forging hall master and was in charge of all the affairs of the forging hall, that was under the premise that Qin Shujian was not here. If Qin Shujian was here, as the hall master, he still had to listen to the other party's orders. Soon, after a simple inventory of the value of the materials in the forging hall, Qin Shujian transferred the corresponding contribution points to Shan Yuqing. Then, he took away all the materials. Looking at the empty storeroom, Shan Yuqing felt helpless. Then, Qin Shujian found Jingfang again and said, I need the number of disciples of each grade in the Yuan sect, as well as the internal and external deacons and guest elders. Give me the specific data within a day. Okay, Zhang Fang nodded. Although he did not know what Qin Shujian wanted the data for, it was not difficult to get it. Then, Zhang Fang passed down the order. It was said to be a day, but in fact, in half a day, he got all the things that Qin Shujian wanted. At the peak of Liang Mountain, Qin Shujian held a jade stone in his hand. Then, his divine sense landed on it. All the information surged into his mind. This was a brief information about everyone in the Yuan sect. 23,274. Qin Shujian's eyes flickered when he saw the total number of people on the screen. He only knew that there were more than 20,000 people in the Yuan sect. However, this was the first time he knew the exact number. Shortly after, Qin Shujian closed his eyes slightly, and immediately, his spirit overflowed. Then, a pure young aura spread out, and an avatar that looked exactly like him appeared. Spirit God Incarnation. Qin Shujian opened his eyes and looked at the incarnation in front of him. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind, and he swiped his finger in front of him. The Spirit God avatar suddenly split into two Spirit God avatars. But there was a difference. The bodies of these two Spirit God incarnations were also very dignified. However, their auras had weakened a lot. But it didn't stop there. 1 divided into 2, 2 divided into 4, 4 divided into 8, 8 divided into 16. Very soon, 16 spirit deity clones appeared on the peak of Mount Liang. The auras emitted by these 16 spirit deity clones weren't very strong. They were between the prominent divine stage and the divine martial stage. Their originally corporeal bodies also became somewhat illusory. Looking at the 16 spirit deity clones before him, Qin Shujian's expression remained the same. Regardless of whether it was 16 spirit deity clones or 1 spirit deity clones, they were all formed by his spirit deity. They were also a part of his divine consciousness and were completely under his control. Let's begin, Qin Shujian said indifferently. Then, he took out a lot of 6th grade materials from his storage ring. In the next instant, the red lotus of purgation had already been activated, wrapping all the materials within it. After the transformation, the red lotus of purgation's refining power was many times stronger than when it was in the Wisdom King Hellfire. However, in less than half an hour, all the 6th grade materials had been completely melted. Shortly after, Qin Shujian and the 16 spirit deity clones condensed numerous runes in the air and then inserted them into the melted materials. Refining. This time, Qin Shujian wanted to refine an identity token. This was different from refining a spirit artifact or Dao artifact. The identity token didn't need to be of a high grade, but it involved some ingenious methods. These methods, they were slowly refined by Qin Shujian during this period of time with his own forging grandmaster level. The difficulty of refining an identity token wasn't high. It only involved contribution points, so it required some unique methods. Otherwise, even an ordinary high-grade forging master would be able to refine it. However, there were more than 23,000 disciples in the Origin sect. If he wanted to refine an identity token, he would need more than 23,000 pieces. This was a huge amount of work. Before Qin Shujian had broken through to the God Martial Realm, it would have taken him at least a month to complete the refinement by himself. However, after he broke through to the Divine Martial stage, with the help of the Spirit Deity clones, it was much easier to refine it. 2 days later, in the inherited Martial Hall, Qin Shujian gathered the other elders and said in a deep voice, "Collect all the identity tokens in the sect in 2 days, and then give them to me. In the next few days, there will be some changes to the contribution point system." Sect Master, what do you mean? I've already refined a new batch of identity tokens. In the future, everyone's contribution points can be traded freely. However, there will be restrictions on the exchange of items in the sect. Exchange restrictions? That's right. Qin Shujian nodded and explained, for example, outer disciples can only exchange for first-level elixirs and then have a chance to exchange for second-level elixirs every 3 months. As for inner disciples, they can exchange for second-level elixirs and have a chance to exchange for third-level elixirs every month, and so on. In addition, disciples of the same level can exchange items, but higher-level disciples can't exchange items with lower-level disciples. If an inner disciple exchanges for second-level elixirs and then trades with an outer disciple, it's not allowed. Therefore, in order to avoid this situation, the sect allows disciples to report each other. Once it's verified, the disciple will be fined 3 times the amount of the goods traded. In addition, the person who reports can get 1/3 of the fine. Inside the main hall, Qin Shujian spoke out his thoughts in full. He had seriously considered these things long ago. After all, he didn't have any experience in establishing a sect, so there would always be some loopholes in the sect. What Qin Shujian had to do now was to gradually perfect it. Seeing the slightly changed expressions of these elders, Qin Shujian said, "There are no restrictions on the exchange of items between inner and outer sect elders, but it's also forbidden to trade with other disciples. If the situation is serious, the elder will be directly removed from the position." In addition, the sect will set up a sundry hall. After the disciples turn in all the items that need to be exchanged for contribution points, they will be stored in the sundry hall. As for the items that others need, they will also have to exchange from the sundry hall. This includes the alchemy, weapon refining, and array formation halls. Hearing this, Shin Yuqing and the others' expressions didn't change. In fact, there was no difference between exchanging with the sundry hall and exchanging with the disciples. It was just an extra transaction. Moreover, if they needed, they could directly exchange with the disciples and didn't need to go through the sundry hall indirectly. The sundry hall wasn't so much for the elders, but for the ordinary disciples. After all, some disciples with auxiliary professions who wanted to refine things, the 3 halls wouldn't provide materials. In this case, they would either have to find it themselves or exchange with other disciples. As for the items in the storehouses of the 3 halls, most of them were used by the higher-ups and were rarely given to the ordinary disciples. But now there was a sundry hall. Thus, these disciples would have an additional channel of exchange. Speaking of this, Qin Shujian looked at Su Yuanming and said in a deep voice, "Elder Su Yuanming will be in charge of the sundry hall?" "Yes, sir." Su Yuanming was happy in his heart, but his face was still calm. He cupped his hands and solemnly replied. Originally, he was in charge of Yuan sect's finances and already had a lot of real power, but that was only in the dark. But now that he was in charge of the sundry hall, his power was already comparable to the 3 elders. Suddenly, even Yofeng and Zhang Tiniu's faces changed a little. The only one who was able to keep a straight face was Zhang Feng. Also, Qin Shujian paused for a moment before continuing, "I will open a Yuan pavilion in Liangshan City. Everyone will be able to post missions there, and there will also be people who will be able to accept missions there. But every time a mission is posted and accepted, our sect will take a certain percentage. Our sect's disciples can also post missions in Yuan Pavilion using contribution points. Anyone who accepts a mission will also be rewarded with contribution points after completing the mission. Like the sect's disciples, cultivators from the outside world who have the identity token of Yuan Pavilion and have enough contribution points can also exchange for spiritual pills, cultivation techniques, martial arts, and other treasures in the sect. Moreover, according to the number and difficulty of missions completed in Yuan Pavilion, the people who complete the missions will also be divided into ranks. As for the function of the ranks, it is to unlock the exchange restrictions. The higher the rank, the better the items that can be exchanged. Boom. Qin Shujian's words were like a heavy bomb that exploded in Chengwu Hall. Even the calm Zhengfang's face changed at this moment. If this method was implemented, it would be very effective. Then Yuan sect's contribution points would be given a different meaning to a certain extent. Moreover, this influence was far more than just that. Finally, an elder could not help but ask, "Sect Master, if this is the case, wouldn't our sect's cultivation techniques and martial arts be leaked out? This is not good for our sect's inheritance." "What's not good about it? Now that we have more than 20,000 disciples in Yuan sect, can you guarantee that no cultivation techniques or martial arts will be leaked out?" Qin Shujian shook his head and retorted, "So what if we give you an upper divine level cultivation technique? Without the corresponding talent, how can you achieve anything? Moreover, even if you really achieve something, it won't affect our Yuan sect. The number of experts in the world is incalculable. One more or one less, what difference can it make?" Chapter 415. As for elixirs and weapons, our sect already sells them to the outside world. Now, we're just changing the method. Qin Shujian had long expected this, and spoke frankly with assurance. As for the issue of whether it was possible to privately impart martial arts to outsiders, he wasn't too worried. Everyone was selfish. No one would unconditionally share what they had worked hard to obtain with others. As for the benefits, then, the person who paid would have to seriously consider whether there were any problems with the martial arts that they had obtained. If something went wrong with the cultivation, losing money would be the least of it. In serious cases, they might even lose their lives. In this way, the possibility of profiting wantonly after exchanging for a martial arts was basically not much. As long as another order was issued, all those who exchanged for martial arts and profited without permission would be killed by Yuan sect. In addition, people would be encouraged to report it. Once it was confirmed, a certain reward would be given. In this way, these problems wouldn't be completely eliminated, but it would be reduced by 99%. Hearing this, Zheng Fang pondered for a while, and then said, "Sect Master, although you're right, there's one thing that needs to be known. If this method is implemented, it would be unfair to the disciples of the sect. In this way, I'm afraid it would cause quite a stir. For many people, if Yuan Pavilion was really established, it would be easy for others to feel indignant when they exchanged for martial arts and techniques through contribution points. Why did they have to work so hard to enter the sect and finally get these opportunities? Now, these people could enjoy similar treatment as them after taking a few tasks. These things might not erupt in a short period of time, but if it accumulated for a long time, it would definitely form resentment." Qin Shujian naturally had thought of this problem, so after Zheng Fang spoke, he also explained. Of course, it's not the same as the disciples of the sect. For example, if a level 1 elixir is exchanged for in the sect, it will cost 15 contribution points to exchange for in Yuan Pavilion. If the level of Yuan Pavilion is high enough, then the price difference will be reduced accordingly. But even if it's a higher level, there will still be a 10% premium. The disciples of the sect would be dissatisfied. In the end, it was because both sides were treated equally. As long as the two were separated, the problem would be much smaller. Qin Shujian wasn't too worried about whether such a high premium would deter others. There were some things. It was not something that could be bought with money. There were simply too many treasures that were priceless. Not to mention anything else. Just the high-grade cultivation methods and martial arts were not something that ordinary people could get their hands on. It was even more so for some high-grade pills and spirit weapons. In the end, many of the resources in the sect were difficult to exchange in the outside world. Unless one had a certain status, one might be able to obtain them, and the premium was so serious. Would there be any sect disciples who would privately trade with outsiders? It was still the same sentence. Nothing could be perfect. It was understandable that there would be some loopholes occasionally. Moreover, there was a reporting system. If these disciples could deceive everyone, then even if they had the ability, if they were exposed, then they couldn't blame him for being ruthless as the sect master. At this moment, the entire inherited martial hall fell silent. Everyone was recalling every word that Qin Shujian had just said in their minds. It had to be said. These were things that they had never thought of. This was because, in their understanding, every sect would do such a thing. Qin Shujian's method was more like announcing the entire Yuan sect to the public. But at the same time, if this method was implemented, then the reputation of the sect would definitely increase greatly. It would even have a high status in the cultivation world. After a long time, Su Yuanming's expression was solemn as he said word by word, "Sect Master, this could be said to be a precedent. If this were to spread out, our sect's influence in the cultivation world would definitely increase greatly." However, as he spoke, he looked at Qin Shujian. Once this method is implemented, there will definitely be other sects that will follow suit. If we only open Yuan pavilions in Liangshan City, then our influence will be limited. When other sects follow suit, our influence will be further weakened. Since we are going to do it, then we have to expand our influence to the maximum. So I suggest that we open Yuan pavilions in all the cities that our sect has influence over. This way, even if other sects follow suit, it would be difficult for them to compete with us. After he finished speaking, a shocked expression appeared on some people's faces. How big was Yuan sect's influence? It covered the entire 13 prefectures of the Great Zhao dynasty. According to Su Yuanming's suggestion, it would cause a huge commotion for the entire Yuan sect. After Su Yuanming finished speaking, Zhang Fang nodded slightly and said, "Elder Su's suggestion is feasible. In addition, this old man also suggests that we open Yuan pavilions to the public and exchange treasures for contribution points. In my opinion, it is more appropriate to directly take contribution points from the silver that Sect Master mentioned earlier. Once a mission is issued, the person who issued the mission will have to pay a portion of the contribution points in advance. If the mission is completed, there will be an additional commission. If the mission fails, then the contribution points of the person who issued the mission will be refunded. As for the contribution points paid by the person who accepted the mission, they will not be refunded. In this way, our sect's profits will not be low." Through Qin Shujian's words just now, in a short period of time, Zhang Fang already had an idea to add to it. Regarding this, Qin Shujian also nodded and smiled. "I did not think of Great Elder's words before. Previously, he had only thought of taking a commission and had not thought of using contribution points to replace it. But now that he thought about it, if this was the case, it would be easier for Yuan sect's influence to increase. However, if they opened up the exchange function, Yuan sect would not be able to take any commission here. Otherwise, if there was a difference in price, there would definitely be people who would profit from it. It was the same. If they did this, the sect would become even more lacking in manpower. As for the problem of manpower, Qin Shujian also had some ideas in his heart. Although there were only 20,000 or so Yuanzong disciples, ever since Yuanzong allowed some of the disciples to go out and open dojos, as well as businesses in various places, the number of people who were labeled as Yuanzong, although they did not appear to be part of Yuanzong, had actually reached an extremely large number. These people basically took care of some businesses in various places and occasionally sent some talented disciples to the sect. Under such circumstances, naturally, they could also mobilize these people to take care of Yuan Pavilion. Such a negative effect was at most giving up some businesses. Compared to the huge profits that Yuan Pavilion could bring in the future, giving up some businesses was just a drop in the ocean. Qin Shujian was very clear about how to distinguish the long-term benefits. After a round of discussion, with that, the matter was settled. What he needed to do next was to collect the identity badges of the sections. During this period, it also caused some commotion. However, under the suppression of many elders, there was not much of a disturbance. In the courtyard, Qin Shujian took out the identity badges of all the disciples from his storage ring. Then, he enveloped them with his vast divine consciousness. In an instant, all the information in the identity tokens appeared in his mind. Qin Shujian held his breath as he recorded all the information he had received. After breaking through to the God Martial realm, the spiritual god had become extremely powerful. It was no longer as simple as having a photographic memory. As long as he scanned any information, no matter how complicated it was, he could firmly remember it in his mind. Subsequently, Qin Shujian drove the Red Lotus of Purgation and wrapped all the identity tokens in it. Then he saw all the identity tokens melt and then gradually condense into a weak fire lotus. This is, when he saw the fire lotus, his face showed a look of astonishment. Originally, he just wanted to destroy the original identity tokens, but seeing the fire lotus condense was completely unexpected. Looking at the familiar fire lotus in front of him, Qin Shujian thought and took back the red lotus of purgation. Then he stretched out his hand and held the weak fire lotus. Subsequently, he then turned his attention to his attribute panel. As expected, after absorbing the fire lotus, the life force column directly jumped. Seeing the increase in the amount of life force, Qin Shujian had a general answer in his mind. The increased life force should be the life force that was consumed when I exchanged for the identity tokens. It seems that this thing can be recycled, and judging from the increased life force, it should be 100%. In this case, it's not a loss. He was in a good mood that the identity tokens could be recycled. No matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. For Qin Shujian, who was now extremely short of life force, every bit of life force that entered his account was worth celebrating. After absorbing the fire lotus, Qin Shujian finally took out the batch of identity tokens that he had refined before from the storage ring. Subsequently, the spiritual god turned into silk threads and spread out, wrapping all the identity tokens. Then, according to the memory in his mind, he wrote the corresponding information on the blank identity tokens. This process consumed a lot of divine thought power. Even though Qin Shujian had now broken through to the god martial realm, he still had to write in 2 batches. And after each writing, he had to take a short break for an hour. It took him half a day. He finally finished writing all the identity tokens. After doing all this, Qin Shujian left his courtyard and handed the medallions to the elders of the inner sect so that they could distribute them. As the tokens were distributed, another reform of the Yuan sect was officially heard by all the disciples. In an instant, there was another uproar. Chapter 416. If one were to say that the previous rules of the disciple assessment were only a change, then the change in the contribution point system this time could be considered a complete reform. The sect disciples could no longer exchange for high-level treasures without limit. This way, some disciples were forced to raise their level, or else the resources they could obtain were limited, just like exchanging for pills. Outer sect disciples in the basic realm usually only needed to consume level 1 or 2 pills. However, after reaching the peak of one's qi and blood, consuming level 1 spirit pills would no longer be of any use. Only level 2 spirit pills would have an effect. As for some obstacles, one would even need to consume level 3 spirit pills to have a chance of breaking through. However, outer sect disciples could only exchange for level 3 pills every 3 months. This was undoubtedly a drop in the bucket. As for inner sect disciples, they had a chance to exchange for level 4 pills every month. Most of the people who could become inner sect disciples were in the true martial realm. Level 4 pills were also extremely needed. This way, these disciples were forced to raise their level in exchange for the convenience of exchanging. However, after raising their level, this meant that the difficulty of the assessment would increase every time, and they had to find a way to maintain it. Additionally, there was also something that made these disciples excited. That was, contribution points could be freely exchanged. This was undoubtedly more convenient for some people. Although there would be some players who would wantonly buy contribution points, Qin Shujian had already expected this. That was why he set up a level exchange system. This way, even if some players had a large amount of contribution points, they wouldn't be able to use them. Additionally, Yuanzong also announced a new rule. In the past, as long as the contribution points reached the target, they could use the contribution points to raise their level. However, it was different now. When outer sect disciples were promoted to inner sect disciples, other than paying 500 contribution points, they also had to be tested for their realm. Only when they broke through to the true martial realm could they be promoted to inner sect disciples. As for inner sect disciples being promoted to elite disciples, other than paying the corresponding contribution points, they also needed to raise their cultivation to the spirit god realm. In other words, now, contribution points alone weren't enough. They also needed a corresponding realm. Otherwise, even if they wanted to be promoted, they wouldn't have the chance. After this news was spread, the entire Yuan zone was filled with cries. F***CK. Why is there such a big reform? I didn't hear anything about it before. Sure enough, Mount Liang's fort master has the final say. This punch really caught me off guard. After hearing the news, Lu Dazhong was stunned on the spot. Then, he complained loudly. Loss. It was a huge loss. This was the only thought in his mind. Before the system was reformed, no one had received any news about it. In addition, there was still the sect competition, so they were all waiting for some weak idiot to raise their sect's level. When the grand competition comes, I will snatch it from him in one go. But now, it was completely unexpected. Lu Dazhong clutched his chest, his heart aching so much that he couldn't breathe. Looking at the more than 10,000 contribution points on his identity token, as well as his status as an inner disciple, Yi Zichen felt a chill run down his spine. He suddenly realized these 10,000 over contribution points were probably going to be wasted. Besides consuming a certain amount of contribution points, an inner court disciple had to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm to be promoted to an elite disciple. For the players at this stage of the game, there were some at the peak of the true martial realm, but the domain enlightened spirit god realm was a threshold. So far, only a handful of people had reached this level. As for the promotion of elite disciples to personal disciples, one had to be at the airborne realm. This was a huge threshold. It could be said that, as soon as this rule came out, many players who had saved their contribution points and were unwilling to advance their level felt like they had wasted their contribution points. It was still okay to be promoted to an elite disciple. They might be able to reach the domain enlightened spirit god realm after spending a few months. However, if they wanted to be promoted to a personal disciple, they could forget about it without spending a few years. Now, there was an additional level exchange system. In other words, for those who hadn't advanced, even if they had contribution points, they might not be able to exchange them for the things they needed. Miao Yuqing said in a serious voice, "The sect is clearly not giving us a chance to slack off." Sigh. Lu Dazhong also let out a long sigh when he heard that. This move, it was really too late to dodge. No matter how much he planned, he still fell into the hands of Mount Liang's fort master in the end. He almost didn't need to think carefully to know who came up with this idea. It was only when that Mount Liang's fort master personally gave the order that this matter would be carried out without any prior notice. This was also the benefit of the sect having the say. No matter what decision, as long as the sect master gave the order, there would basically be no twists and turns. If it were other sects that had been passed down for a few generations, some things wouldn't be so easy to decide. As this news spread out, there were many people like Lu Dazhong who beat their feet and stomped their chests. After many people were promoted to inner disciples, they temporarily didn't raise their sect's level if it wasn't necessary. They just jested on their current level. Although they still had to complete the assessment mission, the difficulty of the assessment was much lower than that of the elite personal disciples. But now that this system was out, they realized they couldn't mess around anymore. If they wanted to mess around, they wouldn't be able to exchange resources. If they fell one step behind, they would fall behind. And just when they wanted to advance, they discovered another problem. They couldn't advance. The reason was that they weren't strong enough. This kind of operation made a bunch of people very uncomfortable. Immediately, a frenzy of cultivation was set off in the sect. But for the players, cultivation was something that they would only do when there were no monsters to farm. Under the premise that they could farm monsters, it was naturally much easier to go out and farm monsters to increase their strength. As for the Dao artifacts in the weapon hall, Qin Shujian directly set an exchange level for them. Only the core disciples and the various managing elders were qualified to exchange for them. As for the others, even if they had gathered 1,000,000 contribution points, they could only look at it and couldn't touch it. The dreams of the players who had originally scrimped and saved to gather 1,000,000 contribution points to exchange for the Dao artifacts were directly shattered. The changes in Yuan's sect weren't small at all. Not only were the sects affected, but the other sects were affected as well. Everyone could understand. The current Yuan sect as a whole was moving closer to a top sect. In the past, although Yuan sect had the title of a top sect, it was because of Qin Shujian's reputation. In terms of structure, it was not much different from the sects of the major regions. Even if it was compared to the major sects of the major regions, it was still a little lacking. But now that it was reforming, people could see what a top sect should look like. Perhaps it wouldn't have any effect in a short period of time. But in a few decades or 100 years, Yuan sect would definitely have a foundation comparable to a top sect. When that time came, only then would it truly be considered a top sect, and not like now, where its reputation was supported by a single person. If Qin Shujian accidentally fell, Yuan sect would directly fall from its position as a top sect. As for the other sects of the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain, after hearing about Yuan sect's reforms, they also had some intentions of following suit. After all, there was only one overlord in the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain. If they made any changes, it would easily cause the other sects to follow suit. Moreover, there were some people with foresight. They could also see whether such a reform was good or bad for the sect. There would definitely be some drawbacks. But in reality, the benefits outweighed the drawbacks. Now that Yuan sect is boldly and decisively reforming the sect, it won't be long before its strength rises again. I don't know if it's good or bad for our Blue Cloud sect to exist in the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain. Qing Su's face was bitter, no longer as calm as before. Ever since Yuan sect's power had grown stronger, the pressure he had to bear had increased. Especially since the Blue Cloud sect was located in the original Blue River True Dominion, which was close to Yuan sect's sphere of influence, he felt as if he was treading on thin ice. Given the current relationship between the Blue Cloud sect and Yuan sect, as long as nothing unexpected happened, the Blue Cloud sect could rely on Yuan sect's backing to preserve its legacy. But if they wanted to grow stronger, the difficulty of this task was extraordinarily high. After all, with a top sect beside them, how could they allow others to sleep beside them? Now that the Blue Cloud sect didn't seem to be a threat to them, they allowed it to develop. But if it reached a certain level and Yuan sect felt threatened, the Blue Cloud sect would be annihilated in an instant. But if they left this place, given the current strength of the Blue Cloud sect, it would be difficult for them to gain a foothold in other spirit domains unless they went to other True Dominion. However, there were no benefits in going to the True Dominion. The sect's development would also be restricted. After seeing the vast sky of the spirit domain, the True Dominion was no different from a cage. Therefore, in Qing Su's opinion, they could neither advance nor retreat in the current situation. The dignified Blue Cloud sect's sect master, who had originally had white hair, seemed to have lost the last bit of black. Sigh. After a long while, Qing Su shook his head and sighed silently. He still couldn't think of a solution. After all, the Blue Cloud sect was too weak and didn't have the capital to make a name for themselves. We can only do this for now. I hope that Yuan sect will fulfill his promise and give the Blue Cloud sect 20 years of recuperation. Otherwise, the future will be difficult. The sects of the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain were shaken by Yuan sect's reforms. Just as everyone thought that Yuan sect would stop, a huge commotion broke out. This piece of shocking news immediately blew up the entire cultivation world. In a short period of time, Yuan Zhong's reputation once again rose by a few levels, reaching an unprecedented peak. Within a day, a Yuan pavilion was set up in all the places that were affected by Yuan sect's influence in the Great Zhao 13 prefectures. After knowing the function of the Yuan pavilion, the entire cultivation world was in an uproar. Chapter 417. Yuan Pavilion. In the Celestial Array sect, after hearing this news, Fang Xinglan's face also revealed a stunned expression. Obviously, he also did not expect the establishment of Yuan Pavilion at all. Martial uncle, Yuan sect has gone too far. Mu Liang, the sect master of the Celestial Array sect, had a face full of anger. To be honest, when he just received the news of Yuan Pavilion's establishment, he was also stunned for a long time. But soon, Mu Liang reacted and immediately came to find Fang Xinglan, hoping to get an idea. Before the establishment of Yuan Pavilion, the various sects in the cultivation world treasured what they had. They valued cultivation techniques and martial arts very much and would not easily impart them to outsiders. It was also because of this reason that most of the powerful cultivators in the cultivation world existed in the sections. Only some lucky rogue cultivators could obtain one or two profound cultivation techniques and make some achievements by chance. Even so, the rogue cultivators in the cultivation world were not qualified to be compared with the sections. In the end, it was still because of the scarcity of cultivation techniques and martial arts. But now, once Yuan Pavilion was established, it would no longer be a problem for rogue cultivators to obtain profound cultivation techniques and martial arts. In this way, it would also have an impact on the status of the sects in the cultivation world. Feng Xinglan said, "Then in your opinion, what do you plan to do?" "Eradicate all the Yuan pavilions in the Celestial Array sect. But once we do this, the Celestial Array sect will completely fall out with Yuan sect. It's not a good thing to offend a top sect. Yuan sect's move is already digging up our foundation. So what if we offend them? With you, martial uncle, could it be that we are afraid of Qin Shujian?" Mu Liang's face was gloomy as he said coldly, "And this time, it's not just our Celestial Array sect. The establishment of Yuan Pavilion will also affect other sections. So what if Yuan sect is powerful? If they want to go against the entire cultivation world, even a top sect will not have a good ending." In his opinion, it was only because of Qin Shujian's existence that the Sky Origin sect could barely maintain the title of a top sect. They were just array masters. The Celestial Array sect was the same. In Mu Liang's opinion, Feng Xinglan had been a formation Dao Grandmaster for several hundred years. Even if Qin Shujian was the reincarnation of a mighty figure, he hadn't stepped into the cultivation world for long. He might not be a match for his martial uncle. In addition, the matter of the dimensional Yuan Pavilion wasn't just a matter of one or two sections. This was also the reason why he wanted to declare war against Yuanzhong. Hearing these words, Feng Xinglan shook his head slightly, unmoved as he said, "The matter of Yuan Pavilion has indeed touched upon the interests of the sect. However, don't forget that everything has its pros and cons. The establishment of the Yuan Pavilion is a bad thing for the sections. However, it is a good thing for the loose cultivators. After all, cultivation techniques and martial arts are hard to come by. Cultivation resources are also hard to come by. Now, Yuan Pavilion has directly provided these people with a hope to reach a higher level. If our Heavenly Array sect were to attack the Yuan Pavilion, then we would have to face not only the Yuan sect, but also the loose cultivators standing on the Yuan sect's side." Hearing this, Mu Liang said disdainfully, "They're just some loose cultivators. What can they do?" In his eyes, rogue cultivators were always in existence that could not be brought to the table. Compared to the deep foundation of the sections, these loose cultivators would never be qualified to compete with them. In Mu Liang's view, Feng Xinglan's worries were completely unnecessary. In the cultivation world, the number of loose cultivators is much more than the number of sections. Moreover, the establishment of the Yuan Pavilion will not only allow the loose cultivators to benefit, but some sects and aristocratic families in dire straits will also stand on the Yuan sect side. Feng Xinglan didn't comment and shook his head. These sects and aristocratic families may not lack cultivation techniques and martial arts, but they still lack medicinal pills, spiritual weapons, or other things. These things are difficult to find in the outside world, but the Yuan Pavilion can provide them. Compared to Mu Liang, Feng Xinglan obviously saw further. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh. The moment a small Yuan Pavilion was established, it already had the ability to pry open the entire cultivation world. As long as one could understand the role of the Yuan Pavilion, they wouldn't want it to disappear. Mu Liang said unwillingly, "Are we just going to let Yuanzhong do this?" Hearing these words, Li Changshu said. Feng Xinglan didn't answer for a while. There had always been irreconcilable conflicts between the sects and the loose cultivators. In the past, although most of the loose cultivators were dissatisfied with the sects, there wasn't too much conflict. But now it was different. The establishment of the Yuan Pavilion gave them hope. If the sects of the cultivation world took action to eradicate the Yuan Pavilion, then the conflict between the two would be completely ignited. When that time came, it wouldn't be a matter of a few sections. If something went wrong, the entire cultivation world would be in turmoil. After a long silence, Feng Xinglan said in a deep voice. The Heavenly Array sect can suppress the development of the Yuan Pavilion, but they can't directly destroy it. The loose cultivators are one thing, but Qin Shujian is not as simple as you think. Could it be that Qin Shujian's cultivation in array formation is comparable to martial uncle's? In my opinion, he is already at the peak of the first level of the Master Realm. With his identity as the reincarnation of a powerful figure, he is at least at the second level of the Master Realm. Perhaps the rumored third level of the Master Realm is not impossible. At the mention of Qin Shujian, Feng Xinglan's expression became solemn, and he said in a serious voice, "The history of the human clan is too long, so long that the number of powerful figures born is immeasurable. Even if the other party is the reincarnation of a powerful figure at the third level of the Master Realm, it's not impossible." The third level of the Master Realm? Mu Liang's face was filled with shock. What Feng Xinglan said caused his heart to be greatly shaken. The Yuan Pavilion has taken too big a step this time. Even if the Heavenly Array sect doesn't take action, there will always be other sects who can't help but take action. Let's just wait and see. It's better to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight than to take action personally. In the end, Feng Xinglan said again, and then waved his hand. Well, I'm a little sleepy. You'd better go deal with the affairs of the sect. Martial nephew, please excuse me. Mu Liang cupped his hands and left respectfully. Although he was the sect master of the Heavenly Array sect, but in terms of strength and seniority, he was far inferior to Feng Xinglan. Towards this martial uncle who was a grand elder, Mu Liang still held a lot of respect in his heart. After all, the reason why the Heavenly Array sect could still maintain its current status was mostly because of this martial uncle. Or else, it would have been very difficult for the Heavenly Array sect to be as stable as it was now. Something similar to the Heavenly Array sect had happened in almost every sect in the cultivation world. In just one day, the Yuan Pavilion had completely spread its influence in the Great Zhao 13 prefectures. This made people understand the power of the top sects, and they were also shocked by the opening of the Yuan Pavilion. They had the same thought as Mu Liang. The first thing these sects thought of was to destroy the Yuan Pavilion within their sphere of influence. This was because the appearance of the Yuan Pavilion had seriously affected the sections. However, not every sect had the capital to go head-to-head with the Yuan Pavilion. The name of a top sect was not as simple as that. It also represented absolute strength. In particular, Qin Shujian's killing of the moon-devouring Demon King and killing of the True Dominion's North Cloud Prefecture had given the other sects a great shock. Moreover, the news of Qin Shujian breaking through to the divine martial realm had spread completely. In Liangshan City, there were not only itinerant cultivators, but also spies left behind by these sections. When the other party had broken through, the news had already spread. The Spirit God 1,000 Feet Divine Martial Art. This news was enough to shock many people. At the same time, Qin Shujian's threat was also increasing. Some top sects knew very well that if one could not perfectly unleash the strength of an array grandmaster in the spirit martial realm, then after breaking through to the divine martial realm, the means of an array grandmaster would be extraordinary. Moreover, after the opening of the Yuan Pavilion, there were things involved behind the scenes. Many people could see that. Therefore, although many sects were dissatisfied, most of them, like the Heavenly Array sect, adopted a wait-and-see attitude and silently watched the development of the situation. However, not all of the sects held a wait-and-see attitude. There were always some sects with deep foundations who felt that the Yuan Pavilion had violated their interests. Therefore, when the Yuan Pavilion was opened, they sent people to destroy it. Liangshan Spirit Protectorate. Yuan Sect, Legacy Hall. The atmosphere in the hall was very gloomy. Everyone had different expressions, but one could see the seriousness between their brows. Even Qin Shujian's expression was a little cold. Zhang Tiniu cupped his hands and said, "Sect Master, from the information we received, except for the Baiyun Mansion, the other mansion's Yuan Pavilions have been boycotted by other sections. There are even casualties. If we don't respond to this matter, I'm afraid the Yuan Pavilion's plan will be put on hold. Sect Master, although our sect's strength is not weak, It may not be a good thing if we become enemies with many sects, Fu Gang said in a deep voice with a serious expression. The opening of the Yuan Pavilion. It would certainly affect the interests of other sections. It was not that they did not expect the situation in front of them, but when it really came to this step, Fu Gang and the others realized how difficult it was to deal with this situation. After Fu Gang finished speaking, the others fell into a short silence. Then, they looked at Qin Shujian. Qin Shujian did not say too much. Instead, he turned his head and looked at Zheng Fang. Great Elder, what do you think we should do next? Hearing the question, Zheng Fang stroked his beard and pondered for a while before slowly speaking. If our sect openly becomes enemies with other sects now, even if we can defeat them, our strength will be greatly reduced. Now that the Yuan Pavilion has been opened and the news has been officially spread, as long as we manage the Yuan Pavilion in the Baiyun Mansion well, we can gradually expand the influence of the Yuan sect. Some of the sects and families in decline, as well as the idol cultivators, can be drawn to our side with some time. Therefore, I suggest that we give up the other mansions and concentrate on managing the Baiyun Mansion. When the time is right, things will be much easier. Chapter 418. Great Elder's words are true. Su Yuanming also nodded and agreed. Our sect doesn't need to fight with other sects now. He now knew how big of a loophole his previous proposal was. He only thought about the influence of Yuan Pavilion and the problem of other sects imitating it, but he never thought about how much importance the other sects attached to the inheritance of cultivation techniques. It could be said that most of the problems that Yuan sect was facing now were caused by his previous proposal. But it was not too late to mend the pin after the sheep had been lost. So when Zheng Fang spoke, Su Yuanming immediately agreed. Yuan sect was a top sect. But the top sects in the Great Zhao dynasty were not as simple as Yuan sect. In the cultivation world, there were many forces that were on par with Yuan sect. It was worth rejoicing. Now in Baiyun Mansion, there were no other top sects except Yuan sect, which also established Yuan sect's power. Therefore, even if the opening of Yuan Pavilion affected the interests of other sects, no sect in Baiyun Mansion dared to resist Yuan Pavilion on the surface for the time being. Even if we retreat, we can't just retreat as we wish. Qin Shujian's face was cold and stern as he said indifferently, our sect's current status and reputation were built by killing with a blade and a spear, not by backing down. Everything in the world is like rowing a boat against the current. If we don't advance, we will retreat. Since these sects dare to provoke us, I'll let them see the consequences of going against Yuan's sect. Retreat. To be honest, Qin Shujian had never thought about this. Although there was nothing wrong with what Zheng Fang and the others said, in his opinion, Yuan's sect had created an unstoppable momentum. The reason why Yuan's sect could dominate Baiyun Mansion, being a top sect, was only one of the reasons. The most important reason was that these sects knew that once they provoked Yuan's sect, they would only end up with their sect destroyed and their people killed. Any force that dared to go against Yuan's sect, they had to seriously consider whether they could bear the risk or not. Once they angered the reason, would it be worth it to lose 1,000 years of foundation in one day? Therefore, this was one of the reasons why Baiyun Mansion still didn't do anything about Yuan Pavilion. However, if Yuanzong retreated, if that was the case, then the momentum that they had been building up before, even if it didn't completely collapse, it would still be very difficult for them to reach the point where they could directly suppress the cultivation world of an entire prefecture. Of course, Zheng Fang and the others weren't wrong. If Sky Origin's sect took a step back, they would be able to retain enough strength to operate in Baiyun Prefecture. Even if the sects in Baiyun Prefecture were dissatisfied and resisted, they would still have enough strength to suppress them. In comparison, the results of both sides were similar. However, Qin Shujian, on the other hand, had no intention of retreating so easily. When had he, Sovereign Qin, ever retreated without a fight? Hearing the other party's words, the expressions of the other elders became even more solemn. They had a hunch. If they were to really fight, Yuanzong's losses would not be small. However, even though they were sect elders, they had no right to influence Qin Shujian's decision. It was different from other sections. Yuan's sect was created by him. As long as he was still in power, the power that he possessed was not something that other sects could compare with. Qin Shujian said, "How many sects are there that oppose the opening of Yuan Pavilion and have taken action to stop it?" 53 sects. How's their strength? One of the top sects, 13 of the major sects, 31 of the ordinary major sects, and 8 of the major sects of the spirit domain. Zhang Tiniu replied without hesitation. After the other party spoke, before Qin Shujian could speak, the expressions of Fu Gang and the others darkened again. 53 sects. Under such circumstances, the first sect to jump out would definitely not be weak. Even though they had guessed it, they were still shocked when they heard Zhang Tiniu's words. One of the top sects, 13 of the major sects of the major regions. Not to mention other things, just the strength of these 14 sects was already shocking enough. Under the circumstances where they were not considered the top sections. With the current strength of Sky Origin sect, it was still a question whether they could compete with a top sect. In fact, even if they didn't say it, Fu Gang and the others already had an answer in their hearts. With Sky Origin sect's current foundation, it was still far from being able to compete with a top sect. If they were given a few decades, this distance might be reduced to a negligible level. 53 sects, very good. Qin Shujian laughed in anger. 53 sects was just the beginning. If Sky Origin sect did not respond, there would be another 530, or even 5,300 sects that would jump out. Within the Great Zhao 13 prefectures, it was not as simple as 5,300 sections. Now that things had just begun, many sects were in a wait-and-see attitude because of Sky Origin sect's reputation. If Sky Origin sect did not respond, there would be plenty of people who would hit them when they were down. As for those rogue cultivators who had their interests at stake, they might not necessarily take action. Rogue cultivators were rogue cultivators. At the end of the day, it was because they lacked a leader and could not form an effective fighting force. If Sky Origin sect took on this role, then things would be much easier. Thinking of this, Qin Shujian immediately said, "Since the Yuan Pavilion has already been opened, there is no need for it to exist if no mission is issued. Law Enforcing Elder, pass down the message. I want the mission of posting a reward for the 53 sects to be posted in all the Yuan Pavilions before tomorrow." Zhang Tiniu took a deep breath and immediately cupped his hands in acknowledgement. Yes, he knew. If the Yuan Pavilion posted a reward for the 53 sects, it would be considered as Sky Origin sect's official counterattack. What happened next? If it was not handled well, a war could break out at any time. After passing down the order, Qin Shujian sent out a message again, summoning Zhao Shanlin and the other elders who had gone out to kill demons. After all, the most powerful Dao weapon of the sect. It was all in the hands of these few people. If a war was to break out, the combat power of the Dao weapon could not be ignored. On the other side, after the news of the Yuan Pavilion being open spread, it had already attracted the attention of many rogue cultivators. After all, this involved not just one or two sections. For rogue cultivators who wanted to obtain some profound cultivation techniques and martial arts, the opening of the Yuan Pavilion was of great significance. Although many sects and other prefectures had taken action, either forcing the Yuan Pavilion to close or directly destroying it. But no matter what, the reputation of the Yuan Pavilion had been completely spread. Compared to the huge number of Yuan Pavilions opened by Sky Origin sect, the Yuan Pavilions that had been destroyed were only a few. Until now, there were already many people gathered in the Yuan Pavilion, waiting for something. In the middle of the lobby, there was a blank mission board that was about 10 feet tall. The Yuan Pavilion had just been established. Until now, no one had issued a mission. Everyone was waiting for the first mission to appear. Now that the Yuan Pavilion was facing a situation, many people already knew about it. No one was sure whether Sky Origin sect's move would succeed or not. If they were to exchange for contribution points and issue a mission at this time, if one was not good, it might be a situation where they would lose everything. It was also at this time, there was finally a change on the mission board. Look, a mission has appeared. Damn it, a mission has really appeared. Some people were shocked, some were happy. Of course, 95% of the people who said, damn it, were players. Not every player would be able to join a sect. Not every player who entered a sect could have a good life. Because there were big and small sections. There were only so many big sects, and the number of disciples they could accommodate was also limited. Compared to the huge number of players, many ordinary players would casually enter a sect and then learn the cultivation techniques and martial arts inside. But this way, the things these players learned were destined not to be good, and their achievements were also limited. For them, if they wanted to obtain higher-level cultivation techniques and martial arts, they could only rely on themselves to fight for them. But killing monsters to level up, earning money to exchange for cultivation techniques and martial arts. To be honest, this would take too long. The strength of the players in the small sects was not very good to begin with. The monsters that they could hunt were also of ordinary strength, and they did not have many valuable items on them. Moreover, higher-level cultivation techniques and martial arts could not be bought with money. Besides having money, one also had to have a sufficient status. The cultivation world had a strong control over higher-level cultivation techniques and martial arts, and did not give rogue cultivators a chance to come in contact with them. So, the players who entered the small sects were basically trapped in an endless cycle. Apart from the players, the local rogue cultivators and the disciples and elders of the small sects were actually in a similar situation. Poor background, poor start. Then, step by step, in the end, they might not be able to break through to the true martial realm or the spirit martial realm after 100 or 200 years. In the end, they would have to exhaust their lifespan and die. It was not until the appearance of the Yuan Pavilion that these people saw hope. So, when a mission appeared, these people would be so excited. But, after a short period of excitement, some people saw the mission on the mission panel, and their expressions changed several times. Level 2 Mission. Kill a Boundless Sect Disciple. Basic Realm Contribution Points. True Martial Realm Contribution Points. Inner Energy Realm Contribution Points. Outer Energy Realm Contribution Points. Spiritual God Realm Contribution Points. Inner Energy Realm Contribution Points. Outer Energy Realm Contribution Points. Spiritual God Realm Contribution Points. 10 contribution points required to accept the mission. Level 4 Mission. Destroy the Boundless Sect. 10,000 contribution points required. To accept the mission, 100 contribution points required to accept the mission. Level 3 Mission. Kill a Tiger's Howl Sect Disciple. Level 5 Mission. Destroy the Tiger's Howl Sect. Level 2 Mission. Kill a Qiyang Sect Disciple. Level 4 Mission. Destroy the Qiyang Sect. Level 5 Mission. Kill a Heavenly Corpse Sect Disciple. Basic Realm Contribution Points. True Martial Realm Contribution Points. Inner Energy Realm Contribution Points. 150 Inner Energy Realm Contribution Points. 1,500 Outer Energy Realm Contribution Points. 6,000 Spiritual God Realm Contribution Points. 15,000 Airborne Realm Contribution Points. 50,000 Spiritual God Realm Contribution Points. Divine Martial Realm Contribution Points. 100 contribution points required to accept the mission. Level 7 Mission. Destroy the Heavenly Corpse Sect. Reward. 2 million contribution points required to accept the mission. 1,000 contribution points required to accept the mission. On the mission panel, a dense list of missions appeared, filling up the entire panel. They were all the same. It was either to kill a sect disciple or to destroy a sect. Just from the words of the mission, everyone could feel an extremely dense killing intent. However, some people even noticed the backgrounds of the sects that had the bounty on the mission panel. Chapter 419. If I remember correctly, the Tiger's Howl sect should be a sect of the South Wind Mansion. The Boundless sect, isn't that a great sect of the spirit domain? Looking at the contents of the missions, many people's expressions changed. Perhaps not every sect's reputation could spread throughout the entire Great Zhao cultivation world, but some great sects of great domains could still achieve this. However, what really shocked them was the last mission. The Heavenly Corpse Sect, a top sect, the Heavenly Corpse Sect. Someone cried out in surprise. The Heavenly Corpse Sect. It was a top sect that was no weaker than the Yuan sect. In terms of when it became famous, the Heavenly Corpse Sect was already a top sect 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Now, its foundation was even more frighteningly deep. But what no one expected was that the Yuan sect would have a bounty on the Heavenly Corpse sect. Looking at all the previous missions, it was not difficult to see that all the missions came from the same force. This was even more shocking. It was not as simple as one or two sections. If one counted carefully, there were a total of 53 sections. Among them, there were top sects like the Heavenly Corpse sect and also large sects like the Tiger's Howl sect. With so many sects collectively having a bounty on them, people could not help but be shocked. Soon, someone said, I heard that after the Yuan sect was established in the Great Zhao 13 prefectures, it encountered resistance from many sects and was even directly wiped out. In my impression, the forces that took action are somewhat consistent with the bounty on them. If that's the case, these sects do seem somewhat familiar. Hiss. After being reminded, the others looked at the names of the sects seriously and sucked in a breath of cold air in their hearts. It was no secret that some sects had taken action to resist the Yuan sect. Some people had even received the news that some sects had taken action to destroy the Yuan sect. Not everyone knew the names of the sects that took action, but there were always one or two who recognized them. Comparing the sects in their minds with the bounty on the mission board, everyone was shocked to find that the sects that took action, they were almost exactly the same as the sects on the mission board. Exactly the same. Thinking of this, someone suddenly said in shock, could it be that this mission was issued by the Yuan sect? Is the Yuan sect declaring war on the 53 sects? Hearing these words, Li Changshu said. Everyone else was stunned in place. Declaring war on 53 sects. Among them, there was no lack of large sects, and there was even a top-notch sect. This Yuan Zone. Wasn't this a little too arrogant? So the Liangshan Stronghold Master is still the same old Liangshan Stronghold Master. You're still so arrogant. I really like you. The sects are monopolizing the cultivation world. Seems like the Sky Origin sect is determined to go against the sections. The players were happy to see this happen, and many of them even had looks of excitement on their faces. To them, what 53 sects? None of that was important. What was important was, are there any quests for me to accept? Are there any rewards for me to receive? The players who could come to Yuan Pavilion were basically not doing well. If they didn't have any fortuitous encounters, they would continue to be mediocre. Now that there was an opportunity in front of them, these players had no reason to reject it. As for the other native humans, their expressions were unsettled at this moment. Originally, he thought that Sky Origin sect would choose to retreat when the sects interfered. The reason why they had gathered here was because of the last bit of hope in the hearts of these rogue cultivators. But now, looking at the missions on the mission board, many people fell into a dilemma. In the end, someone's expression hardened, and he directly yelled, F***CK, it's already not easy to get high-level cultivation techniques and martial arts. Now that there's finally a Yuan Pavilion to exchange for, the 53 sects want to destroy it and maintain the sect's monopoly. What's the difference between destroying one's future and murdering one's parents? Since Sky Origin sect has taken the lead, we have no reason to be afraid. Anyway, if there's no other fortuitous encounter, I'll just stay like this for the rest of my life. If I take the risk now, I might have a chance to go further. In the eyes of ordinary people, cultivators who could step into the cultivation world were superior to others. But only the cultivators themselves knew. Without sex, without resources, without cultivation techniques and martial arts, how difficult would it be to live? Stepping into the cultivation world. Some people did it for fame, some for profit, and some for longevity. But all of this couldn't be separated from basic cultivation techniques. Without cultivation techniques, everything was like a pavilion in the sky, just empty talk. However, 95% of the cultivation techniques and martial arts in the cultivation world were firmly in the hands of the sections. They didn't give rogue cultivators any chance at all. If one wanted to enter a sect, unless one had excellent aptitude, it was impossible. In this way, without cultivation techniques and without talent, rogue cultivators were destined to be unable to achieve anything. In this case, rogue cultivators didn't have the capital to resist the sections. But now it was different. The establishment of Yuan Pavilion gave rogue cultivators hope, and Sky Origin's sect's declaration of war against the 53 sects gave them the confidence to fight against the sections. With a top sect in front of them, this was a chance for rogue cultivators. If they lost this chance, then even if they waited for thousands of years, they might not be able to stand out. So, when that person finished speaking, someone immediately chimed in, "That's right. The sects control cultivation techniques and resources and don't treat us as humans at all. Today, I'll go against them." Where's the mission? F***CK. How do I accept the mission? I want to accept it. While talking, many people had already rushed to the window to accept the mission. Jiang Quan shouted in a deep voice, "Don't crowd, come one by one." In addition, accepting the mission requires the corresponding contribution points. If you don't have contribution points, you need to exchange them first before accepting the mission. How do I exchange them for contribution points? Can I use silver? Hearing this, the people at the front immediately asked. If you use silver to exchange, 200 taels of silver can be exchanged for 1 contribution point. You can also use other valuable things to exchange for the corresponding contribution points, Jiang Quan said in a clear voice, and his voice instantly covered the noise of the scene. In addition, to accept the mission, you need to pay 100 contribution points to register your identity. Only when you have the Yuan Pavilion identity token can you accept the corresponding mission. What? You need 100 contribution points to register. Hearing this, some people immediately revealed a pained expression. 100 contribution points. That was 20,000 taels of silver. This wasn't a small amount. At least not every rogue cultivator could take out 20,000 taels of silver. If they could take it out so easily, they wouldn't be rogue cultivators. Jiang Quan said, "Don't think that 100 contribution points is a lot. There's a defensive formation in the identity token. Even if you face an inner or a cultivator, it can resist for 15 minutes. And as long as you upgrade yourself to the level of a silver token envoy, the original 100 contribution points will be returned." Silver token envoy? After registering in the Yuan Pavilion, there's also a division of identity levels. The beginning is the Iron Token Envoy. As the number of missions completed increases, you can be promoted to Bronze Token Envoy and Silver Token Envoy. Correspondingly, the items that could be exchanged for would increase with each level. And the higher the identity level, the cheaper the things you can exchange. Speaking of this, Jiang Quan smiled and continued to explain. For example, if he doesn't set the exchange level limit for a divine level technique, an Iron Token Envoy will need 5 million contribution points to exchange, while a Bronze Token Envoy will only need 4,500,000. Then, a Silver Token Envoy will only need 4 million to exchange. If you can upgrade to the highest level, you may only need 5 or 600,000. Of course, there's also a level limit for a divine level technique. Currently, without the level of a Gold Token Envoy, there's no way to exchange for it. I'm just making a simple analogy. Hearing this, the others finally understood what the Yuan Pavilion system was like. For a moment, these people's hearts became even more lively. They didn't forget that Jiang Quan had mentioned a divine level technique in his words just now. One had to know. A divine level technique had the qualification to directly lead to the God martial arts realm. So after Jiang Quan finished speaking, someone immediately suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked anxiously, "You mean, as long as you're promoted to a Gold Token Envoy, you can exchange for a divine level technique?" Of course. Hiss. And besides divine level techniques, 9th level elixirs, spiritual weapons, Dao weapons, and guru formations can all be exchanged with contribution points. As long as your level is high enough, you will have the corresponding contribution points. As Jiang Quan spoke, there was a hint of pride on his face. Our Yuan sect is a top sect. What don't we have? As long as you have enough contribution points, everything will not be a problem. Divine level techniques, 9th level elixirs, spiritual weapons, Dao weapons, guru formations. The words that came out of Jiang Quan's mouth caused the others to go crazy. These things, weren't they what they had always longed for, but never had the chance to get? Now that Yuan sect had given them this opportunity, these people naturally wouldn't give up. So, as Jiang Quan spoke, Some people immediately turned and left in a hurry. These people didn't want to leave. They wanted to go home to get money or things that could be exchanged for contribution points. However, there were also some people who directly took out banknotes or treasures that they carried with them and exchanged them for the corresponding contribution points. Just like the scene in front of them, it was almost just a condensed shadow. In just a short 1 or 2 years, Yuan sect had secretly spread out the hands of many people and set up shops and businesses in various cities. Now, with Qin Shujin's order, most of these businesses were directly closed and turned into Yuan pavilions. Even though the 53 sects had destroyed many of them, there were still some sects that secretly resisted. But compared to the overall number of Yuan pavilions that Yuan sect had set up, this was still a drop in the bucket. With the appearance of the first wave of missions, the names of Yuan sect and Yuan pavilion once again spread throughout the entire Great Zhao, causing most people who received the news to be shocked. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.